What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Force Sensitive. It's been a while. Gort, what's been going on?
Oh, not a whole ton. I mean, we had Toy Cons
Yeah.
and your Comic Cons and Halloween and wedding anniversaries. Some show called TF Con. Nobody's heard of that one.
I'm just gonna let you know. Anytime that anybody asked me about it, I 100% blamed you. I put it all on your plate. I said, I don't know what kind of operation Gort's running over there. Sorry.
I was getting actually pretty hectic at work. One guy left, so a lot of different ship coverage going on. It's pretty wild right now.
So we do have an episode for you today, which is nice, and we're going to try from here on out to have at least 2 a month. I think that's definitely manageable. And today we are joined by Jed.
Hey, everybody.
Jed, how do you feel about having a name that's so short and direct and to the point? Kind of like like Jack, Jed.
It's a lot better than saying it's Jedithus or Jedediah or anything like that.
That's a big old fat fact.
Yeah, because everybody's like, "What's Jed short for?" And I'm like, "It's not. It's just Jed." So plus, if you put an I on the end of it, you have a great Halloween costume. So
that's true. That's true. I hadn't even considered that. Real quick to everybody, make sure that you follow the Instagram. We have Esteban holding that down, doing a great job. A lot of interesting tidbits he's been putting up on there. If anybody's been following recently, like I found myself even liking it myself and then being like, man, what account is this? I got to follow it more closely. And I'm like, oh man, this is related to something I'm doing. So it's been nice. And to follow the Facebook as well. But enough about the show. Jed, when did you first see Star Wars? What was that experience like?
My first memory is going to see Empire Strikes Back in the theater, and we one of the things with my family and stuff like that. We didn't have a lot of money, so we always went to the dollar budget theater that will get the movies like a good 6 months or more after they were released and stuff. So I remember. I think I was 6 or something like that when Empire came out. So my mom said to me, she's like, "Oh, do you want to go see this movie?" And I was like, I didn't really know anything about Star Wars, back then because I was 6. So
is this the original release of Empire?
Yeah, the original release.
Wow, man, you sound good. You sound good for your age.
Gee, thanks.
Do you smoke?
No.
Do you drink?
Not anymore. Nope.
See, that's what it is. Your vocal tone sounds beautiful. Mine sounds like a train wreck. No, it's good. Okay, sorry. Continue. You sound great.
So she was like, "Yeah, do you want to go see this movie?" And I was like, "Sure," because it was some type of space thing or whatever. So I remember watching it, and I remember loving it when I saw it. And I remember driving my mom insane on the way home, just trying to impersonate Yoda the whole time. And I was like, so she was like, please stop saying those things. So, but that was my first experience with Star Wars. So I didn't really see I didn't see A New Hope. I didn't see it in the right order, but I was 3 years old, so I don't think I would have remembered it anyway if my parents would have taken me to the theater. So
it's so crazy, man. The large majority of people that we spoke to saw them out of release order. It's rare that we find the opposite. Wouldn't you say that, Gort? Wouldn't you say that's the case?
100%.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, this is 1980, right? So I don't remember when VCRs became a big thing. So this is probably pre that.
That's a good point.
So, and you couldn't buy a tape. I mean, you could, but you're spending $200, $300 on a VHS tape because they're basically selling it just to rental shops and not to people for homeowners and stuff. So
arm and a leg.
Yeah.
So you're 6 years old. You see Empire for the first time in the theater at the Dollar Theater because you had a very sad, poor upbringing, and but you fall in love with it at first sight. What was it at a 6-year-old sensibility? What was it that grabbed you? Do you think
the lightsabers, of course?
Yeah,
of course. That was the fight between Luke and Vader. Just the whole Yoga Dagobah scene. As a 6-year-old kid, you have basically a Muppet, on the screen and stuff. Right. It was really cool.
Well, it's funny because that film is kind of lore heavy. You know, it's mythology heavy. It's not the most action packed. You know, it's probably the least action packed of all of them.
Well, I mean, it starts out with a great, battle on Hoth,
For sure.
which is really cool. I remember that was one of the things that like kind of hooked me was like the whole speeder battles against the AT-ATs. And back when the Atari 2600 came out, which I had as a kid, they had the I think it was the Parker Brothers. I forget which company make it, but they made an Empire Strikes Back game, and all it was that you were the speeder just shooting AT-ATs the whole game. That's all it was. There was no hook, line, and tow cables. It was just shooting.
I think I've seen that, like on a video or something. But it is like, I remember as a kid when I saw it, it was definitely the Hoth scene that grabbed me, and I wasn't quite much interested in the rest of it. I think I liked the asteroid scene a bit, and but now as an adult, I kind of want to move through that as fast as possible and get to like that third act immediately.
Right.
You know what? That asteroid scene is something that still wows me to this day.
Yeah,
I think it looks
yeah.
phenomenal, but it's the music in particular.
Yep, the music
Absolutely.
and the choreography of the ship movements. Like it's really imaginative and ahead of its time in that regard. Like you still see, like space stuff or even like stuff that Marvel has done with kind of alien ships taking similar maneuvers as some of those 5 TIE fighters and the Falcon in that scene, I feel like.
Yeah.
If you think about it, there's like each part of that movie has something that catches you. So they have the whole scene with the asteroid, and then there's that as a space worm or whatever that's in the asteroid, and that was like the Minox. And then you have the bounty hunters, and then you have the lightsaber fight, you have the Hoth battle, you have the training on Dagobah. So there's a lot of like parts of that movie that would grab you as a kid.
Yeah,
it's just that kind of you put it all together, and as I got older. And then I watched the others. I actually, like in my, I don't know, like preteen years, I actually hated Empire. That was my least favorite movie out of all of them.
Right.
Because it was like a cliffhanger, and the good guys didn't really win at the end.
For sure. And it's kind of the least fun. It's not a fun movie. It has some fun elements, but it's a heavy movie. There was something else I was going to say, something that you said when you were like, just like the space worm and all that, like these little, something we haven't talked about on here, like these little nuggets that Star Wars gives you with no explanation, that just kind of captures your imagination. And as you said it, I was like, man, it is true. Like the space worm. The other thing I remember as a kid, like the dune dragon or whatever, the crate dragon that was like laying in the sand of Tatooine in the first
skeleton.
Yeah. Like I remember thinking like, what is that? I want to know everything there is to know about that. And they don't bother with it. It's just like this is a part of the world. It's like so smart, in hindsight.
The beautiful thing too with Star Wars and all that wealth of visuals, there is no information. Now you get that in source books and all kinds of material later on. But they didn't have to elaborate. They didn't stop and take time to explain it. But I think that's where you're getting all the imagination from.
Yeah.
All kinds of other movies either don't have things like that, or they're going to stop and tell you all about it. And it just
are we on the
takes
cusp?
away the wonder.
Are we on the cusp of a hot take right now? I feel like we're on the cusp of a hot take. Let's follow this through. So, like, if we expound that and we kind of place it on the films that we've seen in the last 5 years that people are like, screaming like, what about this? It's not explained. What about this? It's not explained. But it's not the children that are saying that. Is it because we're old and the nothing has killed our fucking imagination?
I think it depends on the people and the I don't want to say like generational like differences, because we didn't grow up with internet. We didn't grow up with immediate knowledge, with a search away type of thing. We had to go to books, or we had to go to library. We had to, wait for something to come out on TV to explain those things to us. Now it's like like a millennial or a Gen Z type of, person would be like, oh, I want to know what this is. I'll look it up. I'll type in real quick. I'll get it. So their attention span is a lot less than, say, what we were growing up.
Right.
So I think that's why a lot of the media, a lot of movies kind of directed toward that now, where they have to explain everything to them. They can't just leave it open to interpretation anymore.
But I don't feel like it's the kids that are like complaining about it. You know what I mean? I feel like it's like it's like the minivan drivers. You know what I mean?
Drivers.
Dude, and there's I think there's a fair correlation that the more often you drive a minivan, the more impacted your imagination is. I'm willing to go out on that branch.
I need to see an algorithm based on that.
Yes, dude. Yes.
These are the numbers that you're after.
For sure. Okay, so you saw the movie, you fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Did you get into any of the collecting, any of the merchandising elements that have kind of gone hand in hand with Star Wars since the beginning?
I think I got a couple of figures my parents got for me, but they wouldn't buy me like any other stuff. Like they wouldn't get me like an X-wing. They wouldn't get me a Falcon or anything like that. I think I might have had a piece of the Death Star playset that my parents might have got me at a yard sale for like 50 cents. Yeah,
Right.
like with a trash compactor or something maybe. I don't know. and I had an R2D2, and that was it. Like growing up, so yeah, it was mostly like books and stuff that I really jumped into after that. So I went to the library, and I remember there was I think there were 2 Han Solo books, or I think there was 2 like Han Solo short stories or something like that
Right.
I remember reading.
A set of 3 books that were early on in the 80s, I think. I'm trying to remember the name of all of them, but the only one that stands out to mind is Han Solo at Star's End.
That sounds right. I think
they're all connected stories. I remember there was like the Blue Max robot in all those, and it's all about Han and like the corporate sector and just his early smuggling adventures, more or less.
Yeah, I don't think Chewie was involved in those.
No,
If I
he's
remember
in
right.
those.
Is he though? Okay.
Yes.
So yeah,
Unless
so I
we're
read
thinking of
those.
different things.
Maybe I just remember the books being like really old, like they were probably one of the first novelizations of Star Wars besides the actual movie novelization.
I have no recollection. I'm looking it up right now, and I'm looking at the cover and stuff. And I mean, obviously the cover looks familiar because it's a very like iconic pose of the two of them. But like, this has no. I don't remember this at all. But to be fair, I didn't do much reading as a kid. I'm not doing a whole lot now, to be honest. But reading was not necessarily something that I was necessarily interested in as a young lad.
So I jumped into comic books then, like the Marvel comics with Star Wars after that. So I was reading all those all the time. And then I remember seeing New Hope. It was it might have been on HBO or it could have been like on a special maybe or something like that on TV. But I remember, I think it was on a pay channel because my dad had like one of those scrambler boxes that you get that stuff for free. So
Right.
I remember watching it every time it would come on. I would always sit down and watch it. So because I was entranced with it, I never saw it before. And I really, really, really liked that. So I just like got really deep into everything I could find possibly with Star Wars, between like the novels and the comics and like any type of books that they had that was written about it.
Do you think that you were more into that than the films?
I think probably about equal because I must have watched the original trilogy hundreds and hundreds of times. So just over and over again. I think they kind of go hand in hand because the comics didn't really follow like very closely to the canon.
Mm-hmm.
There was like all these different like weird characters that were pop up, and sometimes they would kind of talk about like what happened in the movie. Like there was I remember the first issue of the Marvel comics that I got was Leia had they were trying to run away from a bunch of stormtroopers, and she found that one of the stormtroopers was wearing a piece of Alderaan around his neck, and he was actually from Alderaan. And then like she was trying to like tell him to come over to the rebellion and leave the Empire, and they had this the big story, and then he like winds up dying at the end of the book. So,
It's funny. I never got into like I got into the Dark Horse comics a good bit, but I never got into a lot of the comics for stuff that was like the Marvel stuff of the 80s, like the Star Wars stuff, the Transformer stuff. I think it was because I was so shallow as a kid that I like opened up and I was like, this looks dumb, like just because it didn't look like what I was used to seeing. You know what I mean? Like the artwork of that stuff was very different. Than I think if I was a kid today, I would fall in love with like what IDW does with Transformers or what Marvel's doing with Star Wars. But as a kid of the 80s, I was like, man, like what art school dropout did they get to do this stuff? As an adult, I can look back on it and be like, oh, this is beautiful for its time and there's nuance to it and everything. But as a kid, I was like, nope.
Well, one of the things with comics back then is that you didn't have people really buying a lot of stuff that was in subscription, so you had to have a cover that would grab people's attention so they could get it off the shelf, like at a news or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think that's too different from what it is today, to be honest. But yeah, continue.
Well,
a lot
of
those. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, some of those original covers too. They were really just the same art as the interior, so like they weren't as striking as when Dark Horse was putting out stuff with like Dave Dorman art on the cover.
Correct.
So that's a huge grab. Looks like the novels did.
Dorman's work is beautiful, by the way.
Absolutely.
There's a couple of artists, and I can't remember who they were, but they would try to take the likenesses of the actors as best they could and make it kind of like a nice watercolor painting for the cover. So you're like, oh, hey, there's Han Solo. Hey, there's so and so. Instead of just having like a weird comic book interpretation of them.
Well, there's Marvel comic stuff now that's hitting Star Wars wise. Like when I look at the interior art, I'm like, man, I don't want to be the skeptical, Generation Xer, but this looks like a trace of the movie screen to me.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
know this frame. Good. I'm like, I know this frame. I know this exact frame. Anyway. So let's fast forward and get to Jedi. How old are you? You're 9 years old when Jedi comes out?
Yeah, that's about right. Yep.
So how did that strike you?
That was like one of those really cool things where, today everybody you watch trailers for everything so you kind of get an idea of what the movie's about. So I went into that not knowing anything about it. So, the scroll comes up and they're talking about the Death Star and I was like, oh, that's what happened to it. I thought it blew up, and I'm like, oh wait, they're building a brand new one. It's bigger, I'm like, oh,
right.
This is cool. So, that was, I really like Jedi. That was my favorite movie as a kid growing up. I would watch that all the time.
I asked that because of your age bracket, seeing it. I was 3, I was probably 4 or 5 when my dad finally showed it to me, but I was 3 when it came out and you were 9. I have a buddy of mine who loves episode 4 and he loves episode 5, but he was about 12 to 13 when Return of the Jedi came out, and he has hated that movie and everything since. Passionately. And actually, it's a side note, and I've told this story before, but he made a good comment because like some of the stuff he lets go in Marvel, I'm like, well, what about this dude? What are you doing? And he's like, yeah, but he's like, Marvel is the neighborhood kid. So the neighborhood kid messes up, and you go outside. You're like, hey man, don't be throwing rocks in the street, and you go inside. Star Wars is my kid. So when I see my kid throwing rocks in the street, I'm like, get your ass inside. But it's curious to me that at that age it still captivated you. Stuff like the goofier elements, like even I love Lapty Neck. We've talked about it numerous times and at length. But for what the 4 and 5 had established, Lapty Neck is still a little on the goofy side, and then the Ewoks are certainly on the goofy side. So, talk to me a little bit how how that worked for you in your mind.
So, let's see. So with Jedi, I really like that because of those elements. Because I'm a kid, I'm 9. I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, geez, this whole comedy thing is ruining the whole franchise. I can't believe that, I'm gonna, blah blah blah. But I laughed at all the parts with the Ewoks. Mm-hmm. It was weird because like if you look back at those original trilogy and you try to think, was he writing for the kids at that point? Yeah, not really. Probably Jedi was really the first one that really was kind of, tried to pull in like, my age bracket to like really like it. And I did. And it worked for me because I loved every aspect of it. And at that point then, because I loved this movie so much, was like, I went back and I looked at the other two, and now A New Hope was like boring to me, except for the last 20 minutes. I was like, so I fast through all the weird, dumb, boring stuff. They're just running around on the Death Star or whatever. Just get to that and fight scene. And Empire, I hated because it was very deep, like you said, it was very deep in the mythology. It was very, it wasn't fun. It wasn't like action packed everywhere, but it was very heavy on character building and dialogue and stuff. And Jedi was just, like just one scene after the other of having like one adventure after in the movie. And then it was just filled with like comedy, like the one Ewok flying on the speeder bike, with just by his hands holding on, screaming, just like certain aspects of it where the two logs would come down and crush the ATST.
Yeah.
When they get caught up in the net.
Yeah.
And like between Han and Luke, he's like, Han, can you grab my lightsaber? He's like, yeah. He's like, hold on.
And he like definitely cannot. I like that about Han though. He's like, yeah, I got it, even if he doesn't have it.
Yeah.
I'm the exact same way, I feel like. The question I wanted to ask you also about all that is, or maybe not question, but just the point, like the joy element that you kind of mentioned, like the fun and laughing and all that kind of stuff. That is something that became more a part of it afterwards. But like, I think the other thing that you said, that this was definitely targeted towards kids and maybe more so than the other ones. I think you're onto something there. And, I think this is definitely the first time that the merchandising element was taken into account with the creation of the film, and that's never quite separated since. But like when I watch Guardians of the Galaxy, right, I love it until the last 5 minutes when they destroy Ronan with the power of friendship. And choreographed dance.
That's the best part of the movie. It's got the dance off.
And choreographed dance. But like that ruins that whole movie for me. But when I watch it with my kids love it. That part specifically. So like that is something I feel like, we need to remember with all of this kind of media, is that it is important that it grabs the next generation in order to sustain the life of the thing that we love, in spite of our kind of modern, current, or mature sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who just think that's kind of the turning point in the franchise where it ruined everything for them. Like they're like, it's not serious anymore. It's more, slapstick, or there's these elements that just doesn't make sense. They're going from like something that's tragic to something that's funny right after the next cut, and I'm like, dude, just it's a movie. Just don't overanalyze it. Sit back and enjoy it for what it is. Try not to be so critical.
Yeah, well, I think that whenever you change, like I think that 6 does start to alter the formula a bit, and there's anytime that anything alters the formula, there's gonna be some growing pains. But the question is, how does that sustain, right? So, however many years later, we can say that, the changes that were made for Jedi, for better or worse, have helped, to sustain the franchise. And, we can say about the prequels as well at this point, whereas when the prequels came out, it was like, oh my God, this, like everybody hates this now. Like it's not going to be, you know what I mean? But looking back on it now, 20 years later, it's like, nope, it's beloved by those children who are now 25.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That's good stuff. So are you still, by the time the Jedi comes out, are you still heavy into all the books and the comics and all the kind of, secular material, so to speak?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just, it wasn't so much like where I was collecting toys because I either couldn't afford it or my parents couldn't get it for me or whatever. So I could get what I could. So, there was always getting the comic books. There was always the special books that they had on Star Wars. I think there was an Empire thing. Most of them were, basically like cash grabs where they would just take screenshots of the film and then they put like descriptions underneath it, or they give you a little bit more of an explanation about it. The novelizations I would read over and over as much as I could, and it's funny because back then it was a little bit different than the movie, so, and like as a kid you didn't really understand that. You're like, why is the book different? And why is there more things in it that I didn't see on the screen? Why didn't they match up?
There's also like a magic to that era, a pre-eBay, pre-Amazon era, where like, if you were out of state or whatever and you went into a bookstore, there's a chance that you would encounter Star Wars books in that bookstore that was in a different kind of distribution center that you never saw in yours. And it was like
Right.
every store had this whole new world to offer. Or if you like, or God, I mean, if you had the opportunity to go to Disney World when they had the Star Tours ride and the books that they had in there, like you never heard of or seen, and you could pick up all this extra material that you had no idea even existed. That doesn't really exist now. Anything now is kind of accessible,
It made me think of I remember as a kid there was a Return of the Jedi activity book that I had, and it was like one where you can cut things out and you can like make like stand up, like scenes and stuff. But there was a page that I remember where there was a picture of Yoda or a Death Star or something, where the instructions were that you had to stare at a dot on the page for like a minute, and then you would look up and blink a lot, and it said that you were using the Force. And you could see the image in the air in front of you.
That's awesome. Do you remember those sticker books? I had some for Star Wars, but like they were sticker books, but the stickers didn't have a permanent stick. It had to do with the material of the paper and the material of the sticker, and you could yeah, dude. I used to wear that shit out, like putting all the little characters in different scenes and.
But it was not color forms. Is that it? Color forms? Something like that.
I have no recollection of the name of it. I had a whole bunch of dinosaur ones and everything else.
I had a bunch of Star Wars and comic book ones, like Marvel Comics ones, where it was basically a 3 fold out like cardboard piece, and then you could just stick them into like the scene at different spots, little weapons and stuff.
Yep. God, man,
those
so good.
Those were good toys back then.
Yeah,
none of this VR stuff now.
yeah. All right, so moving into kind of the dark times, what was Star Wars during this period? Seeing the films out of order, having a love for Jedi and a varying love for Empire, and relatively not interested or as interested in A New Hope. How did Star Wars sustain itself to you as a fan during that period?
Let's see. So there's like I said, like a lot of I'm not sure when the expanded universe started writing novels for that, but I know there was a couple of one-offs here and there. And I know the video games, of course, like really hooked me. So there was like you went from the Atari 2600 that had like the horrible games that were terrible, but they still were fun. And once you once you got a PC, so then you had the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter games, which were fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And the best part about that is they actually gave you 2 copies of the game, so you could give one to your friend, so you could play each other.
Yeah. I used to get lost in those games. Like I would just lose. I was like, "Where am I?" I'm like way far away from the battle. I have no idea where I'm at.
Yeah, I used to play those all the time. So I forget the one. It was like a photorealistic. It was kind of like they had the video that was incorporated in with the actual gaming play at the same time, and that was where I think they revealed the cloaked TIE fighters at that point
I'm not
in
sure.
the game. Can't remember which one it was, but I think video games was the next step where it kind of kept me in with the whole franchise, and then anything and everything that I could possibly digest at the time. I remember not the Force Awakens, what was the toy line that came out in that time period? It was kind of reprints
at the end of it, the Power of the Force stuff.
Power of the Force. I saw those in the store, and it got me so excited that I thought there was a brand new movie coming out called The Power of the Force. And I was like, I'm like, I can't wait to see it. And here I just find that it's like a whole new toy line or just a reprint of toy. And I was like, so upset.
Right.
I'm like, they came out with that. One thing I wanted to say was, as a kid, like after Jedi came out, a couple years after that, I remember there being a rumor like at school that they were coming out with a new movie for Star Wars, and that it was supposed to take place when they were all kids. And I don't know if that was touched upon in an interview by George Lucas at some point, that he was like thinking about doing prequels, or he had written prequels or something, but that was like this big, huge thing at my school, and everybody talked about it. And then, of course, it died out because nothing ever happened.
There was some varying kind of information regarding George Lucas and his plan for Star Wars. Because like depending on what interview you go to, it kind of changes as to what he says exactly. But you know, the one I feel like that circulated most for me in my school was that it was a 9-part story of which we were getting the middle pieces, and the only 2 characters that were going to be in all 9 were 3PO and R2. That's what I recall, and that he wanted to do 1, 2, and 3 first, but the visual effects technology wasn't in a place where he felt comfortable tackling that story.
Right.
But, you know, there's also interviews where he's like, nope, I had no idea. I just wanted to do a Star Wars story, and then we decided to call it 4 because of Flash Gordon, and, you know, so, like, it all depends, like, kind of on which day you catch him as to what his plan was. But, you know.
Well, what do you believe? Do you believe he had this grand master plan where he had like 9 episodes written out in his head and this whole huge like, you know, outline, and he was only allowed to do like a section of it because it was so grandiose? Or do you think he like just wrote one movie and it took off, and he's like, well, I guess I should make some more and make some more money off of this?
I think he had a plan for Vader, specifically, and then, you know, as he started making more Star Wars films, then he started to kind of develop a plan for Anakin, you know, and I mean a rough plan, like, but I don't think he had, you know, a 9-part story in mind when he started out. I think honestly he only had the plan for 4 when he started out, with a couple of extra ideas, you know, and then, you know, was able to kind of hire talented people to help flesh out those ideas in the future.
Right.
When you look at the original scripts and everything too, and things that could have ended up in a movie and ultimately everything was changed, a lot of that became an amalgamation in the prequels. Like, he reused a ton of concepts, and I think that he always had a general story in his head, but anything that didn't make it into 4, 5, and 6 was saved for later, regardless of whether that was an original intention or not.
Right.
But he got his vision out there, and, you know, that's what we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's George Lucas's Dark Twisted Fantasy or whatever, like the Kanye album. But like, let me ask you this: do you think did that? I mean, I'm guessing it did, as it did for most of us. But did that dry spell make you hungry for it?
It was like always wanting something, you know, new to come out. And when they would start doing, you know, like side stories that weren't really part of the official canon, you always accepted that as being like the part of the history, a part of the entire universe. And then it wasn't until later that they said, no, that doesn't really count for all that stuff. But I think there was enough here and there between the comics and the books and the video games that, you know, would keep you satisfied for like a year or two in between points, for me anyway. And you know, there was other things too at that point in my life where, you know, I think this was probably the early 90s then at this, or late 80s, and I was in high school, so you had all that you had to worry about.
Right.
You know, you get into other things too, other fandoms, other stuff like that. So it wasn't Star Wars 24/7 all the time for me. So, but it was a large part of it. So
I am wondering about that. Like, I am wondering about that, you know, that 83 to 99 era versus the kind of, what was it, 05 to 15 era, and how important those lapses of films are. Now, obviously, the 83 to 99 is far different, because the merchandising and stuff stayed strong from 15 through, from 5 to 15, and then also media. We had Clone Wars and all that kind of stuff. But I do wonder how important it is for the general audience to have that absence, because it looks like we're heading towards another one, you know? And like, I've been looking a lot at, especially for like the Force Friday videos, on some of the more like sociological aspects of what makes those films successful. And as I've been looking at this rollout for The Rise of Skywalker, it's almost, with one exception, it's almost mirroring the Force Awakens rollout, like line for line. And I'm not sure. I would imagine that these people that run these corporate entities are smart people, but you know what I mean? I would imagine, I would hope, I guess, but it's just like, I think you could have I think what they fail to realize is, because of that 10-year gap, the day before The Force Awakens came out, they could have just had a black screen with somebody going, The Force Awakens comes out tomorrow. And it probably would have been as successful as all of their marketing rollout, and that maybe they have to push a little harder. Like typically in Star Wars, like the third film outperforms the second, and the first film outperforms the second and third. That's generally how they go. But I don't know. There just seems to be some strange, like, concepts of like one shoe fitting every foot that I'm not sure is accurate. But I know that during that era for me, I was starved. Like I was, I like my stomach was bloated from being so hungry. Like that look for Star Wars content. So I'm often like as we're approaching this other era, I do wonder about those ramifications of an absence of Star Wars and what it means for the fan base.
Well, you start getting things like the Ewok TV movies.
Oh, those classics, those adored classics. Yes. I'm familiar. Star Cruiser. Crash.
Let's see.
You know what?
I have that tattooed on my back, by the way. Star
For
Cruiser,
all the
Crash,
ridiculous in those movies, I love them. But for The Mandalorian coming up, and people have heard me say it, but like those blurred creatures, those dinosaur things in the second one, making it into The Mandalorian, like
it's great.
That's what has me almost most excited.
Dude,
maybe second to IG-11, just seeing the robot moving around.
And let me ask you this: what do you like more? Do you like the Ewok movies more, or do you like Rogue One more?
Ewok movies.
Get the fuck out of here! I quit.
Something happened. What happened to you?
There was a lot of Disney Channel growing up. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. But I loved those Ewok movies as a kid. Now I find them, just between you and me. Don't tell anybody. But now I find them unbearable. Or unbearable? Anybody catch that? Come on,
Bobby. Rogue One.
Yeah.
Rogue One or Imagine Dragons. Or what's your dragon
movie?
Oh,
Flight of Dragons. Flight of Dragons. I was going to say, I'd definitely take Rogue One over Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, that is the right answer for that. Flight of Dragons.
Probably Rogue One. I mean, but like...
I don't know. You're thinking about it
well,
too
because Flight of Dragons was so adored by me as a child, the Great Adventures of Gorbash and Smeargle versus Omadon and Briog. I bet you I would go toe-to-toe with any other 38-year-old man and how many characters we could name, like a name-off. Like I do one, you do one, I do one, you do one, until somebody's out of ammunition. And the stakes are Flight of Dragons on 4K for free. I'd take that Pepsi challenge. So getting into...
So in that era...
Yeah, continue.
I was going to say, in that era, there was like a lot of things that were... like when were the Timothy Zahn books put out? What year was that? Do you remember?
1991.
Yeah, 91. Right.
So you kind of had that. That was very satisfying to read. Those three books.
For sure.
Yeah, so that was like a great thing. I don't remember if it was a comment in an interview or something like that. I think someone asked George Lucas about those books, and he was like, Timothy Zahn can write what he wants, but that's not really how the story goes, or something on that effect.
It's stupid.
So,
it's all stupid.
Yeah. Basically, this isn't what I wanted. So, but yeah, that was something that kind of broke up that whole dead space of time between Jedi and the things, and then you had the release after release after release of VHS tapes that you can buy. You could buy the originals, and then they had the Laserdisc, I think, before that, and then you had the THX versions, and then the special editions came out, the gold box, the silver box. So
let's slide in. Let's slide into those a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you feel about those, the changes and all that?
When I saw that trailer, I can't remember if I saw it on TV, if I saw it in the theater. I think I might have saw it in the theater. It was like that trailer that started out with the small TV screen and the X-Wing coming out. He's like, for years, you've seen Star Wars at this. And he's like, now you see this one. Ta-da! And like, it showed the whole thing. And like, and I was like, I got a tear in my eye. I was like, oh my God.
Their heads are moving. Moving heads. We're so dumb.
But it was great. They were releasing it was like I think it was one a month or one every 2 months or something. And Jedi was coming out right out like the day before my birthday. And I was like,
in March.
Yeah, it was in March 7th, I think it was, or 9th or something. It was like a day or before or after my birthday. I was like, George Lucas planned this way just for me.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. He's like, everything's stupid except for Jed's birthday.
Yeah, exactly. So I even though the changes, I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that they did, but it was just so great to watch all those in the theater again as a older like adult. Relive your childhood.
What would you say were your favorite changes?
My favorite changes,
well, clearly Greedo shooting first.
Oh yeah, that was that gotta be up there. That's the top two, I think, probably.
Yeah,
that was terrible. I hated that. How about I'll go through the stuff I didn't like. I think one of the things that I really didn't like was
wait, no, because that's easy. That's the easy answer to this, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
let's
the
start
dark
with
side.
The dark side is easy. So what did you like? Because I mean there are good changes there for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think probably it was funny because I actually liked that ring that came out when the Death Star exploded. I enjoyed that when I first saw that. I was like, "That's cool."
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's like a wave of energy just coming out.
Yeah.
Like this.
It is good. It is good.
Yeah.
And nobody ever talks about it, but it is a good change. I agree. No, I sincerely agree. Like the explosion does look more significant now. If you watch the original one now, it just looks like a fireworks at like the finale of a fireworks show.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how many changes they put into A New Hope.
So tons. There were all the aliens and stuff that were in Mos Eisley, the Rontos and the
a lot of walking around shots.
A lot of walking around shots.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of like
rats.
Yeah, color.
The Millennium Falcon taken off.
Yep.
There's the Greedo thing we mentioned.
The color palette changes in the like R2 going through the canyon and stuff.
The most significant is all the X-wing and TIE fighter bits and the last bit, like taking off from Yavin when they fly by the camera before they open up the wings, getting to the Death Star. But the whole battle there, they replaced almost every shot there. If you go watch the original,
right.
This is why you skip to the end of Return of the Jedi, because that original is very lackluster.
Yeah.
I think something like any changes that they put in where it was either an improvement upon the original and something that just didn't like jump out at you, like it's like, oh, that's just there because it's there. Like those little floating droids as they're walking around Mos Eisley, that was just annoying.
They made Darth Vader's eyes black.
I like
things like that. Changing things to make it look better, or something where you don't really notice that it's a change because your memory thinks it was that way in the first place.
Right.
So those are the type of changes that I like, but the things that are just to be put out there to just say, hey, look, we can throw this in this frame now, and those are the type of changes that I don't like.
I think
Rontos.
I like the Rontos, man. I think the only change I don't like is the shooting first bit. And it's actually, and I'm not crazy about the Jabba scene either.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I don't hate the Jabba scene either. It's like if it wasn't
it's not a bad scene.
No,
it's just Jabba looks like shit.
And Jabba does look like shit. And the stepping over the tail bothers me. Like it's just like it's like what is this? Like it doesn't feel right.
Have you watched? I mean, like there's the explanation for that.
No,
and
I know.
But they're so but they're so proud of it that they came up with how to fix it.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
Gets me.
You're right.
Yeah, it was like 20 years ago. So they were like, the special effects back then.
He walks around and it shifts. We don't know what the fuck. Oh, have him step on it. It's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But that little element of that scene bothers me. But I like that exchange that they have. Like, and I like Solo
That's
saying
Jabba's boy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like it's his boogie, but I like when
yeah. Oh, me boogie.
But like the stuff like where Solo's like 15 Jabba, don't push it or whatever. Like I like that little stuff. That feels right to me. But it's just the walking over and the way Jabba looks is silly. And it was funny that they made the 3 3/4 toy of that Jabba, and it looks just as ridiculous.
But it looks exactly like they
Yes.
scanned that model and made it into plastic.
Yes.
Terrible. When episode 1 came out, 2 years later, not to jump too far ahead here, but they had that Jabba that spit out the slime and came with the little frogs.
Yep.
That looked like Return of the Jedi Jabba, and that was a nice toy. I liked that.
I agree. But like, for the most part, I like the changes. I like all the kind of hustle and bustle of Mos Eisley. Like, I feels more like an alive city to me now. Even the like that doesn't drive me nuts. It's like ugh, but it doesn't kill it for me. And I like seeing the stormtroopers on the dewbacks. And I like them having a little bit more life to them. Even though it's like, why would you ride that thing? Just walk. It's faster. And I like all the space stuff that they redid, and I like a lot of the like color palettes and opening up the world of like the Dune Sea and the caverns that R2 goes through. Like I think that most of the changes in 4 are for the better.
I agree.
Okay. All right.
And
good.
plus, remember, like at this point, it didn't matter what they changed. We would just like eat it up because we wanted something new.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The absence. How important is that absence? To the general fan base. So what about 5? What about talk about your? Let me hear the positives that you liked in the changes of 5.
Well, I think probably the one that sticks out the most is Cloud City. How they opened that all up because it was just the white corridors.
100%
now you have the
agree.
sky, and that brought a lot to like that whole area.
Seeing the Wampa. How do you feel about that?
I was okay with that. I think I'm kind of indifferent. Didn't really like it or hate it.
I think I'm with you. I'm kind of indifferent about it. I do like it ultimately, but I think as a kid I would have loved it because as a kid I was like, "What is this? I don't understand what's going on here."
Yeah,
right.
And that might even be why they added it in. Like I always wanted to see the creature, and I had an art book or prop book or whatever when I was a kid, and it had a picture of the puppet that they used, like when he first claws Luke off the Tauntaun.
I'm a puppet.
And that's the only reason I knew what that thing looked like.
Yeah. The puppet, that's great.
Yeah.
Is that the first time they showed like blood in Star Wars?
No, because it's in the arm cut at the bar. When
that's right. But didn't they take that out then later?
No, I don't know. I don't think so.
But that's the kind of stuff that they left in, that real hollow prop arm. They didn't fix that in the movie.
That didn't solderize for whatever reason.
I got a whole list of changes that they didn't do, but like my number one after that is Boba Fett's visor being on the wrong side in Return of the Jedi for a shot.
Oh,
Fix
really?
That. Flip the scene. It's just a mirrored shot.
Oh, no kidding.
You just got to flip a frame for like literally a second.
Like his targeting thing?
Yes.
Okay.
When Leia's got the thermal detonator and he raises the rifle.
Gotcha.
That's something that just kind of fucks me up. Like,
and why would they
mess
do
with
that?
Greedo, but you didn't fix that.
Why would they do that?
I don't know.
It's so silly.
Why wouldn't they fix it?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think all the opening up of Cloud City is definitely the key takeaway to that. And I don't think there's any changes in 5 that I don't like. I love alert my Star Destroyer to prepare for my arrival. I love that.
I got a question about the Cloud City thing too.
Yeah.
Like, is there a good reason why they didn't do that originally? Because everything was all about matte paintings back then.
Yeah.
It would have been very easy for them to blue screen all that in.
Maybe it would have just looked like too still, because they have like ships and stuff going in the background now.
I mean, even just a sunset.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe they thought that it would just be clouds. And that's all you would see would be clouds.
So, you know what? That might be true.
Yeah, it might be. But yeah, I think that one is the one that kind of like doesn't have a bad change. What about 6?
Well, I want to see the thing that I hated the most about Empire.
Okay,
was
tell me.
They made the Yoda's lips move. They CGI'd like his lips moving.
Huh, you know what's funny? I don't notice that at all.
Yeah, you will now. Every time you watch it, you'll see his like lips being CGI moved outside of the actual puppet.
Huh.
And I can't stand that. So.
And I love Thumb Wars. I'm a puppet.
Thumb Wars is the best.
Put your tongue to mine.
I'm your mother.
Okay. So, what about 6? 6, I feel like has the most. I think 6's changes are the worst.
Yeah, because the opening, what do you call that, song and dance number?
Yeah, the old song and dance number. Yeah, I think that's actually what it's. And the fact it's called Jedi Rocks, it's like, get out of here. Get out of here. Jedi Rocks. It's too self-aware. I don't like it.
I did like the whole Boba Fett's the ladies' man kind of guy.
I do like that too. Actually, I like having those dancers in anyway. Like, I'm a sucker for that though. I remember when Marilyn Manson went on tour for Mechanical Animals, he had like these like sequenced like Motown era singers that would like do these choreographed dance and backup vocal things for his show, and it always works for me, and it even works in Star Wars with those 3 alien chicks. Like, I'm just something about that feels right to me, I think, in any context.
How about the Sarlacc? Did you like the Sarlacc
beak
thing?
No, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
I didn't like that either.
It makes it look more planty than beastly. Like, I feel like this is like a Rocky Horror Picture Show. Is that what I'm thinking of? Like not Rocky Horror Picture Show, Little House of Horrors. What is it? Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, Little House of Horrors. The Audrey too.
Feed me, Jabba.
Little
did they ever explain like did they ever do any type of concept art or explain like what like the entire Sarlacc supposed to look like?
Yes, and it's best to just let your imagination. It looks like
it looks like something from like Holy Grail Monty Python kind of fucked up art.
Yeah,
it doesn't look anything good.
Yeah, it looks like a little pod almost, like beneath the sand, like with tentacles and things, like a tree root. But at the bottom of it, yeah, I don't care for that at all. What else is in there? We know the Jedi Rock song is trash. We know that the beak is trash. What about the and I can't keep track of what changes which. How do you feel about the Ewoks blinking?
That's the Blu-ray.
All right, well, let's just roll it in.
Let's
just roll it in.
That's okay.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me too much. Yeah, it doesn't bother me either. What about? And this is definitely the Blu-ray, but what about no? I hate that. I hate that a lot.
That really, it kills it.
I would keep Jedi Rocks if I could get rid of that. I would. I would trade in Lapty Neck for just shut the fuck up at the end of Return of the Jedi.
The one thing we forgot to mention about Empire was how they put Ian McDermott in the hollow communication scene. That was probably the best change.
That's a DVD change.
Yep, I like that as well.
Is that a DVD?
Yeah, they still had the monkey eye old lady thing going in the 97.
I feel like that's a lonely, lonely woman they got to do that.
But where it's nice to see Ian's face there eventually, like I think it looks much more presentable. But they changed the whole dialogue of the scene, and that it just sounds really awkward and strange. And George wrote that.
Oh, for sure.
He sat there all night coming up with the best dialogue he could.
Just crunching the numbers.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care for the dialogue as much, but I do like the scene. I like how the Emperor's head is huge, so to speak, and I like all of that much better than that weird monkey face old lady.
Jedi, did they add more ships at the end of the whole big fight scene? I feel like when all the ships are coming at the cockpit of the Falcon, like it seems like there's more of them or just more going on maybe.
No. I think all they did was clean up some of the
squares,
like the lines and stuff that were all.
That's probably why it looks better.
Yeah,
it actually tells a ship and not a blob.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had the ring. Don't forget they had the ring for that Death Star too.
And it went in a different direction this time.
That's true. That tricky ring. That's true.
What do you think we're gonna have in 9? We're gonna diagonal ring this time.
Maybe
two rings.
No, it'll be gonna be a fleet of rings.
A fleet of rings.
Maybe it'll be a ring. It'll start out on the outside and then come inward.
Whoa!
Just reverse the footage.
Whoa! Okay, so that kind of got us back on track. Let's talk about Shadows of the Empire. How did that sit with you? Well, actually, let me start here. Let me start here. Did you buy the book?
Sure. I did not.
Did you buy the
That
toys?
was like, I did not.
Did you buy the comic?
So, I did.
Did you buy the video game?
I did, yes.
Did you buy the soundtrack? Only Gort bought it, I think, but did you buy it as well?
No, I didn't even know they had a soundtrack for it.
So
That's horrifying.
So 2 out of 5. So it still lands, like, because I got the book and I got the video game, and then I got the comic years later. So 2 out of 5 landed with me. Oh, I got the figures. So 3 out of 5 landed with me.
Yeah, growing up, I was more of a comic book collector than I was like an action figure collector.
Right. But it is
So
interesting.
Comics were always first.
That rollout, testing that rollout on a book. Like, I feel like that is something that like a college thesis could be written on. So anyway, how did that sit with you? Because were you reading all of the EU stuff, or did you kind of do the Thrawn trilogy and then back out?
I was reading a lot of the early EU stuff, but like once they got into the kids and that whole storyline, I kind of dropped out of the EU at that point.
Why?
Probably just because of life changes and doing different things.
Okay.
So,
Not because of the content necessarily.
No, not
Okay.
at all. I'm actually really interested in. I want to go back and like rediscover all that, even though it's not canon anymore or whatever.
Right.
I don't care. But I've read like read the whole thing like with Timothy Zahn, and then I remember there's a couple of books in between like after that or something. But then I read what was the couple books that just came out the past couple of years? A Death Star book, I think I read, and one of the Thrawn books where he was on the Outer Rim. I think I read that one too.
Okay.
But yeah, that whole time period I really liked. But yeah, it was like basically life stuff. I think at this point I was, in my 20s, and going out to clubs and pubs was more important than sitting and reading a good book. Yeah,
that was more important than True Sepakura.
You never read that.
Never read it.
No, of course not. Only person that read it is that liar Anna. Love you, Anna. What about all right, so kind of stepped out of the EU. Shadows of the Empire still kind of landed because of a huge rollout, and we're rolling out the prequel era. What are your thoughts seeing the trailer, hearing that the news is coming? What are your thoughts?
I was blown away. I was so excited. I was so happy. It was amazing. I think I watched that trailer 1,000 times.
No doubt.
Over and over and over again.
Dude, it's still one of the best Star Wars trailers ever put together.
Absolutely.
It is. I heard you guys mention that in one of the previous shows, and I went back and I watched it again. And I'm like, it is.
And it still works.
One of the best trailer. It does.
It still works.
Yeah.
Like I watched it before we watched. We just recently watched them all again, and before we started, I was like, let's watch the trailer for it. And I was like, Phantom Menace is my least favorite, and I use those words very specifically. But like when I watched the trailer, I was like, man, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was. Like look at it. It can't be. Look at this trailer. Look at this thing. This is getting ready to be great. I need to give it a fresh look. And then I was like, oh god, whoopee. So Phantom Menace comes out.
Yep. So at this point, like I had to overanalyze the trailer, and I was just blown away by like the whole new lightsaber dynamics, like of the the fight choreography and how great it was compared to like the previous ones. So my friend, I was living with 2 other guys at the time in a house, and my other friend Gary, we were like super huge Star Wars nerds, and he's like, let's choreograph something so that when at the premiere night we can like take our lightsabers and and reenact it in the parking lot. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that.
So you guys are like cooler than your average guys, basically what you're saying.
It was ridiculous. So my other friend who was in martial arts, he had a Bokens. Those are the wood training swords. So we're out there in the front yard just clacking away in the neighborhood. People are driving by. Nice. There's people across the street just shaking their head. We actually had someone come over and say, could you stop playing sticks in the front yard? But they had the toy lightsabers, back then you could like flick them out, push the button, and hit them. So we went through like 3 of those before we realized that we shouldn't practice with those because they break so easy. So yeah, so we choreographed this whole fight scene that lasted like a total of like 10 seconds. It took us weeks.
Right. You know,
You know,
there's a video floating out there somewhere in the internet ether of Adam and I doing a choreographed lightsaber fight in the dark, so that we had the Force FX lightsabers. It's in the dark so that you could see the glow of the blades better. And it's about 5 seconds long. It's pretty much clack, 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 break, and then Adam going, "Oh shit!" And it's phenomenal. Like he got this lightsaber, he got the Luke one, and I had the Vader one, and we had the whole thing choreographed out slow, and then we went to run it fast for video, and on the third hit, his just snapped in half and shattered. And you can hear the true despair in his voice. It's fantastic. If I can find it, I'll put it somewhere. But
we actually brought a video camera to the premiere, Phantom Menace, the midnight showing.
Nice.
And we had someone record us doing it, and we had 7 seconds of footage. And I went and after I think a month or two later, I went in and I edited every frame to put in like the rotoscoping.
Oh, really?
And the special effects of the lightsaber blades.
Wow.
And it took me forever, and it looks like trash.
You still have this?
I do still have it somewhere.
Yeah, you got to put that up.
Okay. I put the sound effects into it and everything.
I sat through Quiet Hill, so I need to see this now.
It's only 7 seconds, so it's tolerable. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, there was a guy. He was dressed up like to the nines as Darth Maul. He had the horns, he had the paint, everything. He was perfect. Like, and the line was super long.
Man, that was 2.5 hours before his heart was broken. That's what's crazy about it. You know what I mean? Like, that might have been the best moment of his life, and it was all about to go down. Like,
yeah, he was like in the front of the line too. He was probably camping out there at that theater for a good day or two just to get that spot.
It makes me think about the movie Fanboys, where like the guy is like episode 1's getting ready to drop, and Seth Rogen has like the tattoo on his back of Jar Jar and Anakin, and he's like, you know what this is? Jar Jar Binks. This guy's gonna be the shit. Okay.
How many Jar Jar tattoos are out there?
Oh, I know. It's funny in this chat that I'm in with Jisk and Robert. I just shared a meme in there. It's called the Mona Lisa, and it's Jar Jar's like face over top of the Mona Lisa, and he's making like this very like alarmed face, and it's used now as like anytime anybody says anything shocking in it, and they just post the Mona Lisa. So what was your thoughts?
I photoshopped Miami's Dolphins helmet with Jar Jar on it.
So what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts on seeing it for the first time? How old are you also?
Let's see. So what is this? This is
99.
99. So let's see. That would be 20 years ago. So I was 25 at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, I loved it. I loved every second of it. It was so awesome. You know, I loved Jar Jar. I loved everything. It was just like couldn't believe. And it was funny because I was just like running out and I was like grabbing people. I grabbed my parents. I'm like, say, come here, you gotta watch this movie. It's great. And I take everybody there. And
Me too.
And I'm like, I grab my friends. I'm like, come on, you gotta go watch this. This is the best. I think I saw it like 8 or 9 times with like different groups of people.
Yeah.
Just because I was like recruiting them to.
I saw the movie 12 times in the theater, man. It's the movie I've seen the most in the theater. I saw it 12 times, and like you, I was grabbing everybody I could to go see it. And my buddy Mario, it was like our go-to if we were bored. We're like, man, what do you want to do? Like, I don't know. You hungry? No, not really. Want to see Star Wars? Yeah, let's go see Star Wars. I'm like, we just go see it again.
Did you were you sitting there in the theater and you'd be like go like lean over to like one of your friends and be like, okay, this part, watch this part. This is really good.
Well, I remember right before those doors open for Maul at the end. Like, I remember telling people countless times, like, okay, here we go. You know, like,
yeah.
It's so funny, man.
It's hilarious.
So why? I mean, all right. So let me ask you this quick divergent. How do you feel about episode 1 now?
I was actually telling Gord about that earlier. Like, so for years went by and the other ones came out and the third one was always my favorite at that point because of the long, huge lightsaber battle and everything going on. And I hated the Phantom Menace. I thought it was trash. I thought it was garbage. I thought it was, political and dry, and there was so much boring stuff going on. And like for years and years and years and years and years, that was my attitude toward it. And I always say, oh, if you want to ever get into Star Wars, just watch, 4, 5, and then 2, 3, and then 6, and then maybe one Sunday afternoon when you're bored, watch episode 1. But probably about a month ago, I went back and I rewatched the whole prequel trilogy again. And I gotta say that it's actually my favorite now.
Your favorite Star Wars film?
No, my favorite of the
prequels.
3 trash prequels. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the less trash of the 3 trash, yes. So
see, it is interesting. Like, I like you walked out of that movie loving every second of it. I loved Jar Jar. I loved Anakin. Like, I was looking at such little minute details and making big explanations in my head of why they were okay. And then, now it is certainly my least favorite Star Wars film ever made, with the exception of the Ewok classics. But, it's so funny. I think it was like it was not eating. I hadn't had anything to eat from 83 to 99. And then I was given, a McDonald's cheeseburger with the kids' meal, and it tasted like heaven. Like that's really what it was for me. And I didn't recognize its faults for years.
So, like, I've been trying to be less critical of stuff. So, I've been trying. I looked at these movies where instead of trying to overanalyze everything and find all the faults of it, I wanted to like just sit back and see which ones I enjoyed the most, just like overall. And the Phantom Menace of the 3 is the one that I enjoy the most, and Attack of the Clones is the one I hate the most. Just going back and rewatching it.
That's an interesting way to approach it, because I think, having watched them all recently, my 2 favorite saga films are 5 and 8, but they're probably the 2 I least enjoy. I might enjoy 7 the most, and it's far from my favorite, but it's just, it starts and it goes, and it's just good popcorn fun until the end.
Yeah. That's how I felt about Phantom Menace again. I was like, this is like a movie. It's like it's all contained. It has kind of like a beginning and the ending. They go through like all the tropes that they have to, and it's kind of like you could have stopped it there if you wanted to, but but you didn't. They didn't, of course. But it's kind of like A New Hope. It's like you could have stopped it there and it would have been okay. Yeah. It's like there was a beginning, ending. They even had like they mirrored the whole ceremony, marching thing, awards, medals, all that stuff. And actually, putting aside all the hate, for Jar Jar and just kind of accepting him for what he is, he's basically there as a comic relief, and just appreciating him as a comic relief instead of like hating him for that. Yeah, you actually enjoy the movie a whole lot more.
Right.
And then when you go and you watch the other ones and you listen to the atrocious dialogue and the bad acting and like just the plot holes, it's just the Phantom Menace just seems to be more of a fun movie, and I actually enjoy it more than the other 2 and the prequels. So
let me say this as well. I'm willing to go out on a limb and say it's less bad acting than it is bad directing, because I feel like that entire cast is great in everything else.
Yeah. Well, so interesting way that it's an interesting point, and what supports that is that you have bad writing in the originals, but they carried it. Like they got through all that content and they gave you the best possible deliveries, and it makes it entirely palatable.
And you have different directors as well.
True.
So moving into episode 2, when that movie is coming out, are you still infatuated with episode 1, or had the tables begun to turn for you?
No, I was still I was still in like love with Star Wars.
Okay,
at
good.
that point.
Good. So how do we feel about episode 2 walking into it for the first time?
I really liked that movie too. I wasn't. It was kind of one of those things where it was like you wanted more from it, but you didn't get it. You know,
Yeah.
like it was like you had this adult Anakin, not adult, but like, you know, teenager or early adult like type of Anakin, and you wanted him to be more badass and less whiny and complainy and dumb over everything.
Right.
And you never did. You never get it. You know, you just I don't like sand. Gets everywhere.
You never get the intimidating Anakin the way you want it. You know, where the dude would walk into a room and everybody would be afraid.
Right.
But not even just that. Somebody who had a normal demeanor instead of just whiny at all given moments.
Yeah.
And you get that in the Clone Wars, and that's
agreed.
Kind of the only place, but you really need that in the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I'm not meaning to say that doesn't count, but not the same way.
But it doesn't.
You know, the scales are
not
even.
Yeah. His whole character in that is just really weird and creepy. How he's like, he just won't let Padme alone. He's just really weird.
Well, can we say I fucking on the show?
There's an interesting way that, like, Gort, who was it that we had on that said, you know, try to watch those prequels and imagine Anakin dealing with having to restrain his emotion at all times, you know, via the council, and try to see his performance through those eyes. And I did try to do that when I just watched them recently. And
isn't that Esteban?
No, it wasn't Esteban. It was and forgive me, I'm terrible.
And maybe I'm getting that confused because it was Anakin heavy.
It was your friend. It was like it was a friend of yours that you had known forever. You played.
Oh, Mike.
Mike
Glass.
Yes, he had said try giving those films another try and watch them through the lens of Anakin constantly being told to keep his emotions in check, trying not to give any emotion, et cetera, and it does give a different flair to it. And it does. It's hard to remember that at every turn, you know, where I was like, oh, why isn't he just going crazy here? You know, but I'm like, oh, because he can't. He's not supposed to. And, you know.
Really, what you're saying, too, there, it's not dissimilar to how Jed's talking about Jar Jar. And I watched episode 1 the other day. We're watching them 1 through 8, you know, roll up into 9 coming out.
Sure.
And where I already have, and I have the same order for the prequels as you did, Jed, how I feel about them now. Jar Jar's not like that kind of problem. Like, it's easy to get past him because it's almost too nonsensical to be bothered with. Like, there's nothing really to hate there. Like, he speaks unintelligible and you can't understand him half the time because it doesn't make any sense. What Anakin does make a larger amount of sense, and you can make sense of everything that he does do, whether you like it or not.
Right. Right.
It's already, I think, less offensive than Jar Jar. And I don't mean to really compare the two, but I think there is an interesting comparison to be drawn there, the way that somebody talks about one and the other.
I agree.
There is an interest. There's an element of this movie that we have to talk about because it is of importance to you, which is Yoda using a lightsaber. But before we talk about that, we have to talk about another element, which is of extreme importance to Gort, which is where Yoda lets out his battle roar across the galaxy. Which is somewhat in the vocal tone of So talk to me about both of those things. You can talk about the roar very briefly and how much you love it, and then we can continue to the lightsaber tool. I'm a puppet.
Is it that Gort is the same type of yell as like when he falls off of Luke when he's doing the one-handed handstand there on Dagobah? He's like, roar.
Actually, not too different.
So when Yoda comes like walking around the corner, like that was a great moment for me. But I was really thinking about this like before going into the movie, because I remember there being rumors of like Yoda having a lightsaber, and I was just like shaking my head at that. I'm like, he doesn't need a lightsaber. He's a Jedi master. You know, he's past that point, you know, where he doesn't have to, you know, do hand-to-hand combat type of stuff. So, you know, it came around and they did the whole, you know, force powers this, you know, between him and Dooku, and that was great. And then he's like, well, I guess this won't be settled, by power of the wheels or whatever. We'll have to settle with a lightsaber. And I was like, no. I'm like, no. And then he did the and then
His
did
battle roar, yes.
Yeah, his battle roar and the flipping, spinning, hopping, jumping, pinwheel fight choreography, I guess. I don't know. So I hated it. I hated every moment of that. Because like I was telling Gore earlier, I'm like, it's like one of those things where you want to see something in a film that you've been reading about, like Professor X and Magneto playing chess. You want to see that. And once you see it, you're like, oh, that's so cool.
Right.
But then you see it 20 more times in all the other movies. You're like, okay, whatever. It's like, but like with me, like growing up, because Empire was the first movie, I like really got into that whole mysticism of like the Force and how it's connected and how everything's balanced and how between me, you, and this tree and the rock and the ship, and it's like this energy, and it's like when you're become a master in that, you don't he even says luminous beings need not this crude matter. You don't need to be physical anymore because you've elevated beyond that point. And then they kind of brought him back down into that whole just it'd be cool to see him doing a whole fight lightsaber thing. And it immediately reminded me of one of the Jedi video games, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been 2, where you had to choose between the light side or the dark side. And one of the the bosses that you fought was like a big guy, but there was like a little dude, and he was like hopping around the scene during the fight. But it just reminded me of that whole thing too. And it took away the whole, this is a Jedi Master, very a mystic type of thing. And even with the Emperor or Sidious in the third movie, when he pulls out a lightsaber too, I was just like, I hated it because I expected it to be like a big force power type of battle, and that's the way it would have went down, and there would have been a victor, and there was really no need for them to start swinging around, laser swords.
An interesting one. I think there's a stronger case there for Sidious versus Yoda to not be having lightsabers. And when there were figures and things being revealed before that movie, I did see, Emperor with the lightsaber. I'm like, oh, that's never considered that he had one.
Yeah.
And that's probably the same perception that you had towards Yoda. And I mean, truth is, in Empire, Yoda tells Luke, and it's probably one of his best spoken sentences, your weapons, you will not need them.
Yeah.
As he goes into the cave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that just ruined it.
And I understand the point that you're making, and it makes sense to me. I don't think it's one of those things where it's like, nope, you're wrong. You got this all wrong. I get it. I get it. That being said, man, I love it. And to be fair, I don't like when they play lightning catch. Like, I don't care for that bit at all, because it just seems like that's something that should have been grander and wasn't somehow. Like, I'm going to throw some lightning to you. I'm going to catch it. I'm going to put it in my pocket. And then I'm going to, like, it seemed like that's something that should have had grander consequences. Like when he caught the lightning in his hand, it's like, oh, shit. But then it's like he doesn't do anything with it. It's like, all right, man, I'm going to put a little bit up here. And
well, maybe. I mean, he catches it, and like there's something casual about the scene, I guess. But it goes to lightsaber, which you would think is like a lesser thing to be doing than like this wild force stuff.
Right.
Everybody can use the lightsaber.
Which is why I get his point. His point. But there is something about. So I get into this discussion in another sequence. If you were to ask me, all the Star Wars movies are made that will ever be made, right? It's over. It's done. That's the end of Star Wars forever and ever and ever. If I would have rather experienced Yoda using a lightsaber than not, I'm always going to choose I would have rather experienced it. And it's kind of how I feel about Leia doing her Clark Kent impression. Is that when it's all said and done and Carrie's no longer with us, would I rather have had an experience where I got to see her use the Force than not? In spite of how it was ultimately done. And I always go back to, no, I'm happy to have it. And I think that's how I feel about Yoda with the lightsaber. And it's also it's the pull. It's my favorite pull of all time. And my favorite lightsaber pull. Because of the swag. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if he would have just snatched it from his belt, but no, like, he wants you to see it first. Like, that's what gets me about that. Like, here, you see that? But yeah.
So like Dooku, right? He has like this curved blade, and his like fighting style is this very, I guess it's supposed to be like this very on guard element of like a foil type of fighting thing, right?
Makashi style, I think.
Oh, thank you, Makashi.
It's a very Takashi 6ix9ine style. Yes, I'm familiar. Continue.
So I mean, and then you guys, what's Yoda style? Let's spin and flip and hop as quickly as we can, and basically whirl the lightsaber.
But is it?
I mean, I did just go fact check myself. It is Makashi.
Is it Makashi?
Yes.
But it is. But it isn't. Like, to me, it's. How do you fight that? You know, like, because if he's not doing that, then he's just standing on the ground, you know, using your regular kind of.
Yeah.
And that to me would have been like, oh God. Like, that looks, that's awfully silly.
You put your hand on his head, he's just swinging back and forth. Wonk, 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 you know. That's what I'm saying. It didn't fit. It didn't for me. That's why I didn't like it.
No, and I get it. And there are. I mean, I think you might be the first person on this show that's like, nope, not for me. But I'm glad to have that opinion kind of documented, because it is one that's out there, and it's a fairly popular one that's out there. Is that was a misstep. But it's, I mean, like, it's, I guess to me, it's like saying like, Darth Maul's a misstep. It's like, well, you know, maybe, and like, I don't think you're necessarily wrong in saying that, but it's also my favorite part of the Phantom Menace. So I kind of feel that way about Attack of the Clones. Like you might be right. I'll give you that. You might be right. But if you remove that movie becomes far less interesting to me.
Yeah, I think if they would have expanded upon the whole Force powers battle, I think that would have been
that could have been something
better. Yeah, because you already had the lightsaber battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan and Dooku, but I think like Gort said, like when you watch the original trilogy and in Jedi you see the Emperor, you never ever think in any of those scenes he would bring out a lightsaber and start fighting Luke. He would never do that. Like, he was too powerful. The lightning's coming out of his fingertips. You're like, he doesn't need a lightsaber.
Well, so see, I agree, but my argument for that is that he doesn't need a lightsaber for Luke.
Okay.
You know, like,
I get what you're throwing at there.
I see what you're saying, but I would see if I mirrored that with Yoda, as Yoda being like, you know, the top tier Jedi, and Sidious the top tier Sith, then he wouldn't need one. He wouldn't need a lightsaber either, and you'd have this big, huge like Force power battle instead. So, but that was my vision of how I took those characters. I never ever saw them as being that way. But then, did you ever wonder, like, when Yoda said, you know, like, oh, 900 years old, you become good. You will not, like. What did he look like at 100? Was he as tall as like a 5-foot person? I mean, did he shrink over time? Was he really ripped?
I was going to say it, Gort. God damn it! Beat me to it. Full head of hair.
Full head of hair flowing in the breeze. You know, he has like 3 lightsabers, like in different weird, you know, patterns. And he's like just kicking ass everywhere.
You know what else I love about that scene is when he reaches and grabs the cane back after it.
Yeah.
That's like another one of my like little favorite bits about that. There was a TV trailer.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Right back.
There's a TV spot for that is fantastic. Of it's because Spider-Man 2 came out that year, and Spider-Man 2 was killing it numbers wise, and there was a TV spot that like used the Spider-Man font, and it was like, this summer, be sure to see the #1 action hero, and then it cut to Yoda pulling the lightsaber. That I always kind of adored. And then the other thing I remember about that is George Lucas did an interview for part of the rollout, and said, "You're going to learn why they call him Master." And I remember like being like, "Oh shit!" And then I didn't feel let down. But I saw that movie with my best friend Adam, and we both walked out of there loving that. But then within 24 hours, he was like, "No, actually, I don't like that. The more I think about it, I don't like it." But to this day, it's one of my favorite things. But I get it. It's one of those things like I totally understand where you're coming from. But I'm not sure if a force fight between Christopher Lee and Yoda is like, I think I'd be much more interested to see it with Sidious than with Christopher Lee's old ass.
You kind of got some of it like within Revenge of the Sith, because he, like, during the council fight,
right?
He was like taking the big, huge, like spinning council seats or whatever, and throwing it, and he was like stopping it and then throwing it back and stuff. So you kind of had that power kind of balance thing going back and forth.
And that's something that makes that whole fight a lot grander too. Like, listen, I love that Yoda fight in Episode 2, but the Emperor fight between Yoda might be one of my favorites ever.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Especially when he walks in through the door like a boss and just knocks those two guys out against the wall.
Yes, swaggy, so swaggy. It's the casual nature of it. Like, first of all, let's get these guys out of here before we continue, right? Yeah. I mean, let's not allow these distractions to stop us from getting down to business. It's so good. But so let's move into Episode 3 a bit. But I do feel like when he pushed Palpatine, like, and Palpatine goes over the desk and into the chair, they stay on that a little too long, where it starts to feel a little Three Stooges to me. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. Like, he goes like into the chair, and he's like, it's like almost like his underwear would be showing underneath, and it would have hearts on it. But real quick before we dive fully into Episode 3, so where did Episode 2 rank for you, even with your distaste for the kind of Yoda lightsaber scene? How did you feel about the movie overall?
That's my least favorite Star Wars movie out of all of them.
Copy that.
Yeah.
All right. So then where does that put you in terms of anticipation and kind of excitement for Episode 3?
So I think, during 2, like when Anakin kills all the
Sand people.
Thank you. Sand people.
Native Tatooiners, as we say now.
No relation.
So, like, at that point, you're like, yes, like, I'm going to get the badass, Anakin that I always wanted. And you do for, like, 5 seconds, I think, right?
Right.
And then he slips back to the whiny, creepy Anakin. So, but in Episode 3, at least it was better, because he wasn't that creepy anymore, because him and Padme were together. So he didn't have that kind of date rapey type of character to him. So.
Do you think that's how George operates around women? Let's keep it real. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say he's writing from firsthand experience and how he deals with women.
He just keeps telling them how much he's been thinking about them day in, day out.
That every woman he's ever fell in love with, he's just like longingly looked at for an awkward amount of time and said weird things.
Until they finally just break down. Man, I hope not.
That's probably weird. Sooner than not when he mentions that he slaughtered them like animals.
Dude, Kevin Smith. Oh. Kevin Smith said it. Write what you know.
She's like, this guy he was kind of creepy, but now he's like, he murdered all these people. He's kind of hot now that he's a murderer.
I think there's a lot of rocks in his backyard.
I still,
little markers.
I know, and I know it's like a joke, but I love that I slaughtered them, like all of them, the men, the women, not just the men, but the women and the children too. They're animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I love that bit, before he has the emotional breakdown, which kind of kills it for me. But
yeah,
the only thing that's helping that scene is the music.
Well, the music never hurts any scene in Star Wars, I feel like, except for Jedi Rocks.
Oh, what's really funny is that I was dating a girl named Annie back then when these movies were coming. I was, yeah.
Reverse
so my
creeping.
Friends, yeah, so my friends would scream her name all the time, like, Annie! I'm like, shut up.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Okay. So real quick, because we talked about trailers a bit. So to me, Episode 1's trailer and Episode 3 trailer are the best Star Wars trailers ever made.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. Well, except for the re-release in the theaters trailer, that was awesome. The TV and the X-wing.
See, I want to give you episode 1. Two had a trailer where it just gets into the Clone Wars, and it made that movie look epic, which it's not. And I don't know.
No, it's not.
That trailer, though, I'll have to find it and send it to you. But that is probably my favorite.
Not the breathing one though, right? Because that one never landed with me.
And I'm not saying it's the best, but it's my favorite.
Are you talking about the breathing one?
No, it opens up with
that was the teaser, I guess.
No, it's what I think it's like the third or fourth like major trailer that they did. It opens up with like the brass beats from right before Luke would be getting thrown into a sarlacc.
Gotcha.
You know, I will not let this republic be split in two.
Gotcha.
And then it just gets right into the action and shows you all the Clone War shit, and it looks amazing.
Nice.
Looks amazing. We're gonna get a whole movie of Clone Wars. There's stormtroopers in this movie and Jango Fetts.
Little did we know we were getting exactly what was in the title.
And then we get, hello, Dexter, like in the diner. Like, that's what we get.
How big your pocketbook is.
Where was that guy again?
I don't know. That dude needs a Hall's mentholyptus, though. Moving into episode 3, how did you feel about it? What were your excitement levels dealing with? Because by this point, your feelings on episode 1 has started to change. You're not crazy. You're not crazy about episode 2. So where's your excitement level for 3?
I wanted it to be like that redemption movie. I wanted it to be the things that I wanted the Clone Wars and everything else before that to be for a Star Wars movie.
I think a lot of people felt that way.
For years, even in the beginning, I can't remember where it was referenced, if it was referenced in the novel or whatever, but they said that, Obi-Wan and Anakin had a fight on a volcano or a lava planet or something like that. And basically that carried throughout the mythos in the back of everybody's heads forever. Yeah. And then you finally got it, in this movie, which was fantastic. The thing
must have said something like that in an interview, but I want to jump in real quick. In the early 90s, there was a Star Wars screensaver program that I had, and one of them was like just information instead of like animations. It was mostly like droids walking around. But one of them was like a title screen that explained the relation of Obi-Wan and Anakin and that fight at a volcano. And I remember reading that when I was maybe 5, and that's all I ever wanted. And I don't, I'll let you go. That's your story there. But it's always been there.
Yeah, I don't know how either. Like, I remember it being a thing as well and not knowing why. Like, I'm like almost like the what is it, the Mandela effect or whatever, where like everybody knew it was a thing, but nobody can like pinpoint. I'm sure there's someone that can, but like I knew that they had this fight on a volcano also, but I couldn't tell you why. It's just the same reason why I look at Optimus Prime and I know it's Optimus Prime. I can't tell you why. It's just I wouldn't know what else to call it.
I think it's like one of those things where they're trying to explain Darth Vader and why he has so many different like biomechanical things in his body. And I think they go into like maybe like a short exposition of how, he was burned really badly during this fight. It might have been actually Obi-Wan telling the story, but yeah, it was probably in one of the novelizations, I'm thinking, maybe, or
maybe,
or interview like that. So
right.
But the only thing about that fight that I didn't like was that they had the same color lightsaber. They should have gave Anakin a red lightsaber. Then you could kind of see the difference, of the the good, the bad type of contrast.
The way that they explain how the red lightsabers come about in the current canon would have had actually a really interesting fit for that movie.
That's
true. Like the dark side of the Force is potent and corrupts the crystal to the point where it turns red.
That's true.
And that would have been interesting
cool
if it changed color during the fight. I don't know if that's a change I'd want them to go back and make, but that would be kind of neat.
Yeah, his eyes changed. So
yeah.
Well, so Obi-Wan's eyes changed too.
But that looks like there's a full moon out.
What, the yellow?
I mean,
werewolf vampire business.
Let's not forget.
I'm not knocking.
Let's not forget that Obi-Wan's eyes change color in those scenes too.
Yeah, were they all black?
They go from blue to
they
brown.
Get pretty beady looking.
They go from blue to brown because his natural eyes are brown, but he had blue eyes for the character. But some of it's not right. Like there's continuity issues there.
The part when they used when they were doing the Force push against each other, in the middle of the fight, and then they knocked each other up with
I love
cool
that.
stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that. That fight is I think it is the most epic and grand, and I think it always should be. I don't think any lightsaber fight should ever compete with that ever. I think it should always be the pinnacle because it's such a important moment to the lore.
And you get beats and callbacks from like Empire, where like they're fighting through the hallway. You know,
Yep.
it's there's a lot of like little small references that you kind of don't think, but like that whole speech, and him just like flipping a switch and becoming super evil like out of nowhere. Just that part didn't really sit with me. I knew that it had to happen.
Wait, which speech are we talking about? Are we talking about the Palpatine Vader speech or the Obi-Wan?
Only Sith steal in absolutes.
That one, the Obi-Wan.
See, I love that one. The Palpatine one
like,
seems a little forced to me, but I love that one.
Yeah, he's like, my new empire, and I was like, God.
Like,
what?
It really is like a trigger there. I've always felt that worked. I mean, it's definitely sudden. It's a movie and all that, and you get some touches of him being darker in the prior film. Also, I mean, there's some meat for it.
Yeah, my favorite beat in that whole thing is when he's talking to Padme and she's like, Obi-Wan was right, and he's like, I don't want to hear any more about Obi-Wan. Like, I love that. Like, I can hear James Earl Jones saying that line for one, but like I also know that vibe. Like I know, like look, I'm tired of talking about this dude. All right, we're not talking about him anymore for the rest of the day. Are we clear on that? I love that.
I don't think I ever want to hear James Earl Jones say the word Padme again. That just doesn't work for me.
No.
Is Panda okay?
Did you ever see the deleted scenes from that? It's pretty epic. So he goes, "Where is Padme?" And then the Emperor's like, "It appears in your anger you killed her." And then he goes, "Where are my legs?" And my
It appears in your anger you slice them off.
What about my arms?
I never saw it. I watched it.
No, it doesn't exist.
No.
Just in my own personal headcanon does it exist. Where are my legs? Actually, shout out to Shoulders. My buddy Shoulders used to make that joke all the time. He said there was 2 deleted scenes in Revenge of the Sith that never get the right amount of shine. That's one, and then the other one is when Yoda lands in the dude from Law and Order's car or whatever, Jimmy Smith's car. Jimmy Smith's like, what happened? And Yoda looks up at him and is like, "Order Jedi teaching." It was like what is it? Fuck it! I fucked the joke up, but like whatever that joke is, like if you fight in he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day.
There was a meme going around like a couple of months ago where it had the scene where he's like, "Don't try it, Anakin. I have the high ground," and like the next panel shows like a classroom where they're teaching about the high ground, and he's absent that day.
Yeah. But given all of those elements, how did you feel about that movie walking out of it, and then in retrospect applying that to the 2 previous films to kind of view the trilogy as a whole?
Yeah, I liked it. I was happy with it.
Yeah,
it was a good, ending. Except for the whole. I mean, there's a lot of things in the movie that was just didn't make sense. It was kind of dumb, but it kind of like tied up a lot of like all the loose ends, or most of them anyway. For me, for when I watched it, like the how he referenced Qui-Gon, and how how they able to come back with the power or the Force.
I really thought how he appear as a spirit there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Liam Neeson probably didn't want to have anything to do with it at that point.
Well, it's funny. I did hear that there was some beef between Liam Neeson and George Lucas, but I can't find any evidence of it anywhere. Like, I remember that being a rumor, like that there was some huge fallout, between the two. But every time I see Liam Neeson talk about it in interviews and stuff, he always seems to speak kindly of it, and same for Lucas. So I don't know if that's just some Marilyn Manson got a rib removed kind of bullshit rumor from that era, or there's a second Marilyn Manson drop in this.
Might have been because he like abstained from like anything that was reference to his character throughout the years. I don't know if he did the voice in the Clone Wars or not, if they got somebody else
I can't remember
to do it.
No,
I know
in
that
season 6, I think it was him. They got him back
season
for that.
6. Yeah, that was
good.
years later, right?
but good.
True.
Because I
But
mean,
like in the
don't sit up
in
on
the-
your high horse and do Taken 16 at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Like, give me a break.
He's
Yeah.
16?
Well, I don't know. In my head canon.
Bobby's throwing like all types of deleted scenes and stuff like that out there. And I'm like, I didn't see this. And I'm like, oh, it's imaginary.
That's the world I live in. only part of it's real.
Because in Revenge of the Sith, when Yoda's sitting there meditating and he hears like supposed to be Qui-Gon's voice go, Anakin, no, or whatever, it's very not sound like Liam Neeson at all. You can tell that it's something
No, I think that's him. It's
digitized.
just
No,
that-
it sounds like him to me.
that they were. No, it's him. But
it
he
is
didn't
him,
come
just-
and re-record that. I think it's just clips from
Right,
episode
right,
1.
right.
So they could have re-recorded it, but they didn't. So it's possible because he didn't have any involvement with those movies or the franchise after that for very long.
Right.
That whole rumor might have started with beef against him and George Lucas. So
What so but that is something else that's important to think about is like I do feel like Revenge of the Sith was kind of for better or worse, like it was kind of everybody was kind of on board with it. Like there's people that are like, it's fine, but like the hate wasn't there for Revenge of the Sith like it was for the previous two, and it did really alleviate the pressure. Like the pressure was building, and it was like a pressure relief valve, and it just let off a lot of the pressure of like angry fans. And that is an element to Star Wars trilogies that like I feel like we forget is that like there's like it's not over till it's over, and you don't know what's going to be done to make you feel differently about what's has already come. And I feel like that's a prime example of it. And for the most part, I mean, that hate didn't. Those movies, the legacy of those movies survived far more than the disdain by the kind of older fan generation.
it's like any fan base, right? You have the original, G1ers who wanted to be exactly how they remember it when they were kids, and then you have the kids that are in this generation, this generation of movies, who they love it and they don't really, like the originals that much. So the kids that grew up when they were younger and their first experience was the prequels, that's their original, trilogy for them.
Right.
And then you have like the kids growing up now who are watching this trilogy. This is going to be their original, Star Wars for them.
Yeah.
And then you go back and reintroduce those other movies, but it's always going to be like their first impression. So as they get older, they're going to always want to have that nostalgia of them remembering their first experience with it. Even if it's garbage compared to like the other stuff, you're still going to hang on to it because that's what resonated with you as a child back then.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that more in the past couple months as we've watched the movies again than ever, where, my kids, definitely sequel trilogy kids, and, as we're moving through the films, I mean, they get excited here and there, like, oh, I like this part or I like that part, but, like, when we got to 7, they're like, finally, God! My oldest, actually, it's even, like, more specifically, like, my oldest, who was, in 2015, she was 7. When she saw Force Awakens, like when we got ready for 7, she was like, yes, Rey, and all the like, here we go. And then my middle child, when Episode 8 came on, she was like, Porgs, like. And she was a bit younger, obviously, when 8 came out, and a little maybe too young for 7. So like 8 is her film, and it's like it's so interesting to me.
Did you ever have that problem with your kids that I had with my kids, is that you try to introduce them to something, but you've like oversaturated them with it too much, and now they don't want to have anything to do with it for a while?
So I have, ironically, Star Wars, like they love it, but they're not like avid fans of it. And I think that Star Wars, it's more. There's more of a diverse sense of media about it. So, like, they prefer 7, 8, Clone Wars, and Rebels. Because they're kids and they like cartoons, and then they're growing up with this trilogy. But, like...
Rebels is a great series.
Yeah. But, like, all the other stuff, like Transformers, I feel like they're oversaturated with, and not because I'm like, come on, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna watch Transformers, but because because we had to do a Transformers convention this weekend, so you're not gonna be able to just sit at home on the couch. We have to go to this thing, and or like there's Transformers sitting around the house all the time, and like, oh, I like, hey, look, we can watch a movie tonight, but right now I got to go do this Transformers review. So I think there's actually, my kids have a little resentment against that franchise, more so than the other stuff. Whereas like they're much more into like Star Wars, DC, and Marvel than they are into like Transformers.
Right.
But to be fair, there's nothing really Transformers for them. Like the new shows don't resonate with them, and that franchise isn't really doing anything for this generation aggressively like it did for mine. But yeah, I mean, I know the vibes, but it's I think the reason why my kids have a little resentment towards that stuff is a little bit more complicated, and I'm sure they'll be on somebody's couch telling somebody for $60 an hour at some point. But what are you gonna do? Can't win them all. Hopefully they'll fucking sit back for a second and be like, oh well, at least he paid for my college where I can get a decent job and fucking go to this shrink.
But you know what? Like, you're talking about how they still have an enjoyment from Star Wars at all, even if it's not every bit of it and proportionate, from one thing to the next. They might like, the newer content more.
Right.
Hey, at least they like it.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly.
So if you take that where you've tried to introduce something to like your kids, and then you keep pushing something on them to the point where they're just like, I really don't, I'm tired of it. It's or if like you said, Bobby, where it's like actually you get to the resentment point. You're like, I resent someone for trying to do that. I think that's kind of like what happened lately with a lot of the movies being released. It was just too much, coming out too quickly, and people either got really tired of it or they started resenting it because it was just, they felt like it was being pushed on them to be like.
My issue with that is that the numbers don't reflect that. That's my issue with that. Like, is that every Star Wars film in this the most populated era of Star Wars media that we've ever seen in history has done extremely well, with one exception that was marketed differently. Like, that's my beef with that argument, is that, like, because and obviously I'm a fanatic of this franchise, so they could marvel this for me. They could put out 3 Star Wars films a year, and I'm going to be there opening.
Oh yeah,
night.
Me too.
But
yeah,
but
a truth that goes into what you're saying too. You look at something like Marvel, which is kind of a format I think they were meaning to emulate, and I don't think they're going to attempt that now.
Agreed.
Right. Not for the movies, maybe shows and other things. But you look at the Marvel movies and you see what an Iron Man or an Avengers did next to an Ant-Man, and that's what Solo is.
Right. No, I agree. But at the same time,
they shouldn't be looking at that as a failure.
Yeah, and they should be putting a different sort. Those spin-off films and all that should be getting a different type of budget. Like, everything should be approached differently. They shouldn't be trying to make the Star Wars saga impact with every Star Wars film. They should it's the right tool for the right job. And go ahead.
Would you have wanted to see Solo as a TV series with seasons as opposed to a movie?
In hindsight, probably. But
maybe a mini series, even like just a one shot, like a couple episodes. Like this Obi-Wan show is supposed to be 6, I think that they said. That's the solid number now. So if you had 6 episodes of young Han Solo, I think that would have been great. And then you just move from one adventure to the next, or
because
you had the Kessel Run and the ship and the gun and the Wookiee all in one movie. If you separated that out in individual episodes, that would have been great.
But you could do so much with like Han, like just all that stuff that he did, like all his smuggling, all his.
Well, and I think they had plans to. I think they had cinematic plans to, until it didn't perform. And then when it didn't perform, there were 16 YouTubers saying we're the ones responsible, and it's like, well, no, not really. Because and we can use this as kind of jumping into like the sequel era, but like my biggest argument with that specific view, like, oh, it was the boycott. Well, it's like, well, then why did the Last Jedi DVD was like the highest selling DVD of the year, with the behind Infinity War, which did stupid numbers, Like, it doesn't add up. It's much more likely that the ball dropping on what Solo was and what it meant and how it was rolled out is like, it's much more likely to have had the grander impact on the. I mean, like, I also think that one of the problems is the reason why Marvel can be so successful is because even though they're just spitting out the same formula over and over and over again, it's different. So you have Guardians of the Galaxy, you have an Avengers film, and you have, Ant-Man or whatever. Those are three vastly different films. But I think that the Lucasfilm conglomerate is so scared to step away from episodes 4, 5, and 6 that they're losing sight of the bigger picture. That you can do different genre styles of movies within Star Wars, but they're just so worried about like, oh my God, what's left to explore? Oh, you know what we forgot? Guys, sit down. That guy, Boshek, we forgot his helmet. We can make a whole movie about how his helmet made it to the bar. So Luke Skywalker grew up with the helmet. He mailed it. He teleported. We're bringing a new technology. He teleported the helmet to Jabba. Jabba teleported it to Darth Vader. Darth Vader actually wore that helmet instead of his helmet for a year, and then he sent it to Obi-Wan as like a let's get over the bad times thing, as like a peace offering, and then that's how it ended up back in the cantina. It's just like they're so scared to just get away from that era that they end up fucking oversaturating it. And it's not that they're oversaturating us with Star Wars, they're oversaturating us with original trilogy shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pardon
you
me.
Should pitch movies, Bobby. I could see you in the boardroom just with your fingers out like guns, just explaining everything.
Yeah, I'm big on that. I'm big. Usually my finger going into the gun usually precedes of me saying, "You motherfucker." All right. Listen. All right, sorry. Whew, okay. So Disney acquires Star Wars, and how do you feel about that at the time?
I was happy. I was super happy.
Me too.
Because I was like, man, like Lucas is on a runaway train right now. What's going to happen next? What's the next accident that's going to happen? Because
the next accident.
Yeah, the next accident, the next train wreck that you can't take your eyes away from. Because it's been said many times. He just had surrounded by a bunch of people who just said yes to everything that he wanted, and no one would stand up and basically say, George, that's really dumb, and that's not going to work, because they want to anger the Lucas. So
and I also think nobody wants to be the guy that said episode 4 is dumb.
Right.
There were so many people that probably lost their jobs over passing on episode 4. That like when he's like, look, I got this idea. We're going to bring in these frog creatures. They're going to fight a whole bunch of droids that look like number 2 pencils. And I think everybody's like, yeah, sounds good.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant.
So yeah, I mean, I think you're right, but I get both sides of that. Like, I think you're right, and I think that Lucas needs checks and balances because he's completely fucking insane. But at the same time, I understand why people could be like, man, I don't want to be the guy to say Star Wars is dumb. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's why
you don't want to lose your job, basically.
Right, and I think that's why Han Solo is so important. Like, and I mean, as a character, and we haven't really had him since, which I think is a huge misstep in Star Wars. Is like you need the guy inside the universe to constantly remind you it's dumb.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So anyway,
all the prequels completely didn't have any of that.
Correct.
So that's
correct. So episode 7 comes out, and you see that, and how do we feel about that?
I liked it a lot. Yeah, I thought it was great. I saw it with my friends, and it was cool. I really like seeing Harrison Ford on the screen again. Except for the part when he's not. But it's funny because you reflect back and you look at all these interviews about the movie, like, and how happy he is to be doing like promos for it and stuff. And you're like, why is Harrison Ford suddenly so happy to be doing a Star Wars movie? And whereas before he was like, I'm never doing one of these again. It's all trash. I hate it.
Right.
But it's because, he dies. He doesn't have to worry about doing any more of them. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you're 100% correct in that.
Yeah.
Did moving into let me ask you this, because you're older at this point as well. Where is your collecting at, if at all, in regards to Star Wars? Like, where does your money go to Star Wars at this age, at this time, aside from movie tickets?
I really wanted to get into the whole Black Series and stuff, and it was like one of those things where I knew that if I bought one, I would just be spending like thousands on it later. So,
and well, I can tell you for certain that Black Series it doesn't stop, and it only makes you want to get more. So I could tell you that for sure. So did it prevent you from going down the rabbit hole, or did you dabble?
No, I just kind of dabbled in some stuff. I bought a couple of figures here and there. I really wanted to get like, you know, the ships and stuff. I bought an ATST, I think, and just like some random stuff here and there. But I didn't want to get like really involved in it because I didn't want to start a whole nother line where I was spending all this money on this line, because I knew that I would just be spending thousands of dollars like I did with Marvel Legends. I'll just get a few, but now I need all the teams, I need all the, you know, variants, and I have like hundreds of those, and I didn't want to do that with Star Wars.
Quick divergence. Are you going to go in on the Age of Apocalypse X-Men?
You know, Age of Apocalypse doesn't do it for me.
Me too.
So no.
Me too. Okay, good.
I'm completely out.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
So do you collect any Star Wars stuff? Do you buy any Star Wars stuff as an adult?
Yeah, actually, I bought a bunch of Play Arts Kai. I got Vader and Boba Fett and the Stormtroopers, and I love it. I think it's awesome.
Are you going to get them all? Just finish off the set?
I don't know. Maybe. Okay. So
I feel like that's one of those things because you're so close. You're like, oh, I got them all at this point.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where like his price like fluctuates, so I'm just kind of trying to see if I can find a good deal on him. So because
fair enough.
But I was just curious.
I was just curious as a you know, because it seems like collecting wise, you've kind of only really dabbled in Star Wars your whole life.
True. I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, mostly it's like been comics and books and stuff like that. And I bought a really nice art print of the Falcon. I was telling Gort earlier, it kind of has, it was from the Bottleneck Gallery. Uh-huh. It has like this gold flake type of paint to it. And it's like a picture of the Falcon in like the hangar. And it has like through the 3 original trilogy movies of different people standing on it. Right. So it has cool. Like kind of like Luke and Obi-Wan and everybody like in the New Hope. And then it has like Han working on it and Empire. And Lando standing there in Jedi.
That's cool. All right, so let's let's dig back into the Disney stuff then. So the next one would be Rogue One.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah,
that was great.
It's fantastic.
I'm not like Gort where I hate it. I loved it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Gort's top 3 things ever. It's the Yoda roar. It's you know what I mean? Like
Ewok TV movie.
Ewok TV movie 1 and Ewok TV movie 2. So. What do you expect from this guy?
I talked to my mother the other day, and she.
Oh, now we're bringing moms into it. Okay.
Oh no, you're gonna like this.
All right.
She hadn't caught up with all the new Disney movies, but she knows that 9 is coming out. She goes, "Well, I better do that." So she calls me up to tell me. She's like, "I watched episode 7, and it was good." And I'm like, "Cool." We discussed it for a minute, and she goes, "And then I watched Rogue One. That was great." And she's loving Rogue One. And I'm like, "I am not your son."
So it's funny. My dad feels the same way. My dad hasn't really loved the Star Wars movie since Return of the Jedi, but loves Rogue One.
That's so interesting.
But not that my dad is at all the measuring stick for what's cool. I can assure you that.
Like no matter what, without discussing it, it's not the same kids movie that everything else is. It's just completely different tone. That's what it is for a lot of people, non-Star Wars fans, I think.
And I think it might be the last time we get kind of a more adult-oriented Star Wars film. I think it might be the first and last time.
Do you think it's like a Dirty Dozen type of feeling?
No. I want to say yes to that, like first thought, but ultimately no.
It feels more like Band of Brothers or something to me. Like
it does, maybe more like that, but not a Dirty Dozen.
Okay.
It feels very militaristic for Star Wars. Like it feels like more like a soldier movie to me than it does anything else.
Gore, what's the thing that you hate the most about that movie? Like what really brings it down for you?
I think it falls apart in the editing overall.
Oh, okay.
Like it's a victim of its circumstances with directors and production overall. I think that I'm actually very curious to see what a more rough cut of that movie might have been before the next team had stepped in.
I would be curious.
And I don't know that I would like that more, but I'm real curious because the trailers had me super hyped for the movie.
Can I tell you what I hate most about it?
Sure.
a Star Wars story.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that.
The whole jingle and the title appearing, doesn't sit right.
I like I think they originally were going to call it like Star Wars anthologies or something like that. That sounds so much better to me
It does.
than
It
a
does.
Star Wars story.
And that's the big kid word for the big kid story, too.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I agree. I mean, you're right. I
That
mean,
they gave us the Happy Meal, not the Burger King Kids Club.
correct. All right, so then let's get into the shits, as it were. The Last Jedi.
I was one of those people that I really enjoyed that movie a lot. I wasn't the opposite where people went online and they were ripping it apart because of like, Superman, Leia, and all the other things like the light speed, solution at the end, and
Right.
everything. I thought all that stuff fit.
Yeah.
And it was one of those few movies where it actually like left an emotional like impact at the end, because when everything was all said and done and like Luke was like sitting on the rock or whatever, or leaning on it, I forget what it is, and he just disappears. It was like you're like, oh no, you're like I didn't see that coming. I didn't see him going. I thought he'd be in the next movie. And it was funny because the whole theater, like everybody in the theater had this big intake of breath. They went,
right.
and then it was just quiet.
Yeah.
So
it also like
I love it.
Speaking of quiet, having just watched it recently, that moment of silence right as the light speed attack is done, I love that. And I think it might be the only moment of silence in any Star Wars film. I feel like no music, no dialogue, no sound effects, no nothing. I could be wrong, but like it seems that way to me. If it's not the only, I feel like it's the longest for sure.
It's definitely going to be the longest, and it probably is the only. I'd have to go rewatch to really know, but I feel like they had a touch of silence before those seismic charges go off in episode 2.
Yes,
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
But I know in one of them, like you hear Obi-Wan in his ship, like with all those like sirens and
the little like
going.
beeps and stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, it does add something to it. That movie, it's up there for me. And like I said, I don't necessarily think it's the most fun to watch. And I think that they tried to add in all the Faviers and all that stuff to kind of increase the fun factor of it. But I do think it's one of the best told stories in that saga.
I'll defend that movie whenever I talk to somebody about it, because they'll break down all the nitpicking of this and that, and I'm like, it's not perfect. It has its flaws, but I'm not gonna rage online about how they would never have done that type of light speed attack, and why didn't they do that in the previous movies and stuff like that. And it's because people wanted to live; they didn't want to kill themselves. There wasn't a kamikaze effort for the rebellion,
right?
So.
And there was always hope to not have to.
Yes.
Right, exactly. So
my dad,
last ditch effort.
When you talk about the online outrage, I was talking to my dad about Game of Thrones season 8 not too long ago, and he was like, I thought it was fun, and I was like, yeah, no. My dad has a very skewed way of the way the internet works and what words mean on the internet, and he's a very literal person. So he was like, what I don't understand and will never understand, Bob, is there are people who need therapy from seeing this. It just says something about the state of the world. That the way this television program has gone, you need to go talk to someone about it. And it's so good. So yeah.
Your dad might be my favorite folklore character.
He's a trip, man. He's a trip.
Yeah.
So now how, let me, as it's so funny because most of the people that we've spoken to on this show, which isn't, I mean, it almost seems like it's like a prerequisite to like get on at this point, have liked 8. Like we haven't encountered that person yet that's like, I love everything until 8, like, so that's interesting to me also. But how did you navigate the fandom in any way, even if you do at all after that movie?
It's either you're the defender of the story, or you're kind of just like sitting there listening to them for therapy, see why they're so upset about it, or you're kind of like in a straight out argument over the whole thing. But I've been lucky enough to know sensible people where you can have a decent discussion where it doesn't turn into like something outrageous.
Yeah, that's
so
important.
You can listen to people's points, and you can see where they're coming from, but then you think about how you felt about it when you watched it, and you can say it's just a difference of opinion, and that's fine. Right. Not everybody's gonna like something,
right?
So it's your opinion, so that's cool. I mean,
there's people that haven't even made a full opinion of it because they're waiting for 9 to kind of connect all the dots.
That's true.
At one time, and that might be the best way to do it too.
That's
in
true.
This case, not always.
I think the problem is, and correct me if I'm wrong if you guys think this is different, but I think the problem is that everyone who doesn't like that movie had in their head what the movie was going to be.
See, that's
what all the reveals were going to be.
I think that's the same thing with Game of Thrones. I think that's the same thing with a lot of things. Is when the expectation, when a studio diverts from your expectation. Do you know what I mean? Somehow you feel like they're wrong.
Well, the people that don't like Last Jedi or have problems with it, like big problems, would you say that's mostly Star Wars fans and not the casual?
Yes.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, I never watched Game of Thrones. I've been hearing about it for years. Like, I just read, like, I see, like, viral stuff, and I kind of just, know. And that's kind of like, like the people that they've never seen Star Wars, but they know who Chewbacca is.
Right.
And it's, not the same. Like, I know some of the characters and the vagueness to it, but when I heard about the ending and how it all played out, like, I could see where there's, like, a touch of anticlimactic storytelling, or, maybe it's not what someone wanted. It's not what it looked like, it was going to be. But it didn't sound that bad, like not end the universe bad,
Well, it's another thing. Like,
all right.
It is like I think that's been another lesson. I mean, this year, 2019, like a lot of things are coming to a close. We had Endgame, we had Game of Thrones, and then we have Star Wars all in one year.
Right.
Like 3 huge things that kind of tied up, and people seem to overall, I would say, accept and like Endgame. I don't care for it at all. People didn't like Game of Thrones, and I thought it was fine. It didn't go the way that I necessarily wanted to go or saw it going, but I didn't dislike it at all. I was like, you know what, that's good enough. And then Lord only knows what December will yield. But the problem with Star Wars and hating it right now is that hating Star Wars is a financial gain. You can do a video on why so whoever, enter name, why Anthony Daniels ruined Star Wars, and you're going to get like 2 million views.
Oh yeah.
So like, you can make an article, you could create a bullshit, internet news source today and be like, Kenny Baker speaks from the dead on how Disney ruined Star Wars, and you're gonna get 30 billion clicks on that thing. Like it's fiscally fruitful to hate Star Wars.
Well, people want to have all that reinforcement for their opinion, instead of trying to find a reason to like something, instead of just continuing to hate it, which is very much the easy path.
Right.
And you're doing that with the Force Friday, trying to give people the positive energy.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we need more of that.
I think you just gave Disney a new thing to sell, the Star Wars Ouija board.
Probably
dude, and you can speak to just dead Star Wars actors. But like, or with Force Friday, or like, I'm trying to make it positive. Like, I'm trying to bring forth positive stuff, energy, and content. But I'm also, if the stuff is negative, I'm trying to at least present it in an objective manner. Like, maybe this, like the one I put out today, maybe this Benioff and Weiss thing has a lot more to do with far more complicated business interests going on than whether or not Kathy Kennedy said, she hates all boys and wishes they all would die. She just wants to hire them all. Like maybe it has more to do with, far more complicated things that have more to do with bottom line dollars for a corporate business. Maybe. I mean, maybe I'm from another planet.
I hope
but maybe.
so. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, if it wasn't, then that'd be pretty sad.
Yeah, I feel like
it wasn't.
stuff like that. Like if you can't connect the dots between Disney Plus, Netflix, and the way that the Game of Thrones pair fit between the two, you're not looking at the clear picture.
Right.
But neither here nor there. All right, so Solo.
Loved it. That was great.
No kidding.
Yep.
So tell me why. Tell me why though, because that answer for you was right off the cuff, right off the bat. You were ready. I loved it. Boom, done. Tell me why such a visceral reaction.
It took me 15 minutes to get used to the fact that it wasn't Harrison Ford anymore. That was a different actor. And then once I got past that point, then I just tried to like it as much as I could. Because I read all this stuff about how there was you change actors and about how he needed the acting coach and how it was just like a ruin, like how it's supposed to be this big huge comedy, and then they stepped in and changed it. And I took all of that and I put it in a box and I locked it up and I threw it in the closet and I sat down and I just enjoyed the movie for what it was. And I did, and I liked it. I liked the whole cowboy type of movie feeling to it. I mean, they're even robbing a train at one point. So
yeah,
right.
I like that sequence.
I do too. I
like it a lot.
It's like I like that movie just fine, but I will say it is my least favorite of the Disney batch. And
yeah, I can see why.
Yeah, and not that I think that there's anything like inherently wrong with it, other than it's I'm not sure how much I benefit from it as a fan in terms of enjoyment, and like it feels much more like fast food than it does like an entree, which I'm sure is honestly the intention, but I'm not sure if I'm interested in the fast food.
Well, you have this main line of movies, right? That's basically this big, huge, epic saga, right? And it's supposed to be that way. And then you have, Rogue One, that's like a more military type of, movie sense, like, it's a mission. Then you have Solo, that's, I thought was kind of more like a very, off the cuff type of like fun cowboyish type of movie. And now you're going to have The Mandalorian, that's going to be a very, in the city streets, dirty, gritty type of, genre. So I guess they were trying maybe to hit all the different type of styles, but stay within the Star Wars universe. So, but anything Star Wars I usually like, unless it's just really done poorly or poorly acted.
So you brought up The Mandalorian, so let's get into the future of Star Wars a bit. Talk about your excitement levels and how you feel about the upcoming Mandalorian and 9.
Yeah, I remember them talking about them doing a I don't know if it was supposed to be a Boba Fett movie Boba Fett series, or if it was supposed to be just like like down in the down in the alley, down the street type of film.
I think it was initially intended as a film, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then they kind of switched over to this, which is great. So I can't wait to see that aspect of it. I always wondered why they didn't kind of just write in that same character. Like, okay, so Boba Fett gets out of the Sarlacc pit, and he just here's his TV series and what he did, and after that,
right.
I mean, there's books after that were written, like what he did and stuff.
Right.
So, but I can see why they're taking on a whole new character. I got really excited when I found out that the actor that's playing the Mandalorian is the guy that played was the Red Viper in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
So he's a real good actor.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is odd because you don't see his face in any of the promos. You don't ever see him take his helmet off.
I heard a rumor that you might not see his face in the first season.
Oh, okay. That's great.
That's great.
I mean,
yeah. Dude, how long before they digitally put him in Rogue One?
That's the SE edition of Rogue One.
So what about 9? Where are your thoughts at with 9?
I wish they would have went back to JJ, because I just have this weird feeling it's going to be like another partial retelling of something that we've seen before, and that's okay.
Right.
But I wanted something a little bit,
different,
like a different, a newer take on things.
Yep. I hear you there.
How are you going to feel like if like a big reveal is like, say they show, like Liam Neeson as a Force ghost, or if they show like Han Solo is actually alive, and he just, he's walking with a cane, or he's got an eye patch or something like that.
So I think I have Han Solo bias where I would probably eat that up. But anything else, like I expect there to be some fan service stuff with this, not only because JJ is a part of it, but also because it is the closure. So like I think that fan service, like I think that honestly 9 might have been a better place for JJ than 7. But I am concerned also because I know that my interest with Star Wars is with the new and different. And I know that Disney's or Lucasfilm's current, regime is definitely in the safe and familiar. And that's what I find most concerning, or, I'm most worried about is how far are we pushing this? Because I want to push, so to speak.
Because they're ending everything, right? They're closing it all up. So they're not going to really introduce too much like, Palpatine was in the Outer Rims and he discovered this new whatever, or he learned this new thing or something. I don't think they're going to really do that because they don't want to open up anything, for those later stories, unless they want to, or I don't know, but it would seem silly to do that when they're trying to close and button up all the stuff that they had, went off track with the things before that.
Do you have tickets for opening night?
No, I didn't get them yet. So
gotcha. Gord, you're coming with us, right?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So, lastly, before we kind of get out of here, you wanted to talk about the fan cut stuff a bit.
Yeah.
So let's have a conversation about that. Explain what you mean by that and why it is of importance to you.
So ever since probably the 90s or whatever, I was always getting into doing CGI stuff and just dabbling with that. I was going to do my own fan film back then. It was going to be like this cross between Star Wars and Sliders back then. It was going to be like where they slid into a world where George Lucas was president of the United States and used all his imagination to shape the country in that way.
And George Lucas would eat sliders in it. And it would be very meta.
You just sit there in the White House. Oh, shoot.
I don't want to derail what you're talking about, but I would love to discuss George Lucas president world. Like, what is that world like? But that's another time.
Yeah, the idea was that he took all the money that he made from Star Wars, he used it for a campaign. Everybody loved him, and he won the presidency in 1980. And he just reshaped and made everything made hunger and everything go away, and the country loved him. And he just stayed on as president for after his 2 terms.
Like, are there midi-chlorian vaccinations? Like, what do you got?
This is pre-midichlorian, so I didn't even think about that at all. Midichlorian vaccination, that's hilarious. Anyway, so around that time, there was a lot of people doing all these different fan films, and they, it's basically the lightsaber, fight here and there. But there was this one guy, years later, he basically saw that there was all these errors and problems with the releases, the DVDs that came out, the special edition. And he was one of those people that hated, all the additional changes that they made, that he wanted to kind of take them back. He goes, I think he pronounced it Adywan, it's Adaywan, edit. But he started with a New Hope, and he used DVDs, and all the changes, the majority of the changes that he made was color correction, taking out errors, things like you said, Gort, where the antennas on the wrong side of the helmet, flipping those things, adding in extra effects where there might have been a wall with panels, but there wasn't in another scene, doing that type of stuff, and just real small, minor, added special effects. He went so far as when he was doing the Empire edit that he did, where he actually built a whole Wampa, costume and stuff, and made the whole set just so that he could have an extra 3 seconds of adding this part into the scene where it made sense.
That's awesome.
He did all these new matte drawings. He did all this modeling and stuff, real modeling of the whole Dagobah set, and just so that it made more sense, so it opened up more. And they're really, really good. I mean, there's some parts of it here and there that are you didn't really need to have that, but they're to me, they're just it's what you remember. You watch this stuff and you're like, oh, that looks just like how I remember it. But then you go watch the original and you're like, oh, it is different. It isn't like the exhaust from the thrust isn't that color. The ion cannon isn't that color.
Right.
They didn't have like all those. So like those edits that he did, and he's working on the Jedi edit. He worked on the Empire one, I think, for almost 10 years before it was done. So they're if you're looking to have like all those mistakes fixed, if you're looking to have like the best type of coloring, the best type of audio, those are the edits that you want to watch for his edit at least.
Yeah, I would love to check those out.
Then there's the was it despecialization, I think it's called, is the other one.
Yeah.
Where basically they just take out all the stuff that was added in and edit it so it makes more sense and stuff, which is fine. It's just you're just removing something that he did. But the thing that I'm really excited about is the 4K transfers. So there was a group of people that they actually bought or had or found or something the original 35 millimeter films of the original movies. So they have like a New Hope, and they took the 35 millimeter film and they scanned it in 4K straight from the 35 reel, and they cleaned out all like the film noise and stuff. So you have this original, unedited, version of the movie that George Lucas said that would never, exist. It would never last. He's like, this special edition is what will be last forever, and people will think of Star Wars is what they'll see. So they scanned it all in, and they added like a digital noise removal to it, and it looks fantastic.
That's awesome.
It's how you remember it from the theater in 77, or how you remember it from the theater in 80 or 83, and it's 4K.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
Well,
it has this film and it has like the different reel changes, and it's like just so raw and original in how Star Wars was back then.
That sounds great. To close it out, one last bit of information I want to drop while we're on the subject of new cuts. There is another George Lucas cut of Episode 4 coming, I think, 2021. It's pretty much identical to what we have now, except there's a breakdancing sequence with the praying mantis at the bar. It's just it's like a 30-second sequence. Broshek does the beatboxing for it, and the praying mantis does a little quick breakdancing number. So look forward to that.
Is that true?
No, not at all. Just more of my headcanon. Anyway, Jed, thank you for coming on. I had a great conversation. That was good.
No problem.
That was good. And Gort, we got to talk about some future episodes, and we should be back more regularly now. October was just crazy for us, so thanks for bearing with us. Thanks for also the interest. We were getting PMs and stuff like, "Where's the Force Sensitive?" and YouTube comments and stuff. So
there was a good bit of that.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Thanks for caring. To be fair, if we go, so we were absent for I think about 3 weeks. In the future, if we go longer than 4 weeks, we're going to put out special editions of the first 2 episodes where we just add a couple extra fun facts in between thoughts, which we're also not doing, but it's fun to say. All right, so we'll be back soon. All right, take care.